Chapter 587. Hello. Are you back in Bing City now? After picking up the phone, she found that Zhang Hai's voice was very enthusiastic. Qi Li was stunned for a moment, but after a moment, she felt a little happy in her heart. It seems that her efforts will be rewarded. Then she asked Zhang Hai. Well, I'm back. I just finished cleaning up the room. Hearing Qi Li's words, Zhang Hai also said to her, Oh, I see. Then you open the door. I'm downstairs. I'll go up immediately. Hearing that Zhang Hai was indeed in Bing City, Qi Li was relieved and said to Zhang Hai. When he heard her words, Zhang Hai was stunned. Downstairs? What the hell? But at this time, Qi Li had already hung up the phone. Because they were very close to Zhang Hai's phone, AI Xueqi and Feng Yunchen also heard the content of the phone call clearly. The three of them looked at each other and couldn't help but feel a little confused. Cough, let's take a look. After speaking to the two women, Zhang Hai sat up from the pile of fragrant meat, walked to the door and opened the security door. Sure enough, as soon as the security door opened, he heard the sound of high heels clicking on the floor in the corridor. As the sound of high heels slowly approached, Qi Li's unchanging office lady outfit appeared in front of Zhang Hai. You are really here. Chapter 589. Seeing Zhang Hai open the door. To be honest, Qi Li's mother was not willing to eat beef that cost more than 2,000 yuan per kilogram. But when she walked to the door, the fact that her family was really rich, more than one person in Zhang Hai's room. Qi Li and in addition to him, AI Xueqi and Feng Yunchen were also son-in-law, who seemed to be a little honest and had no other abilities, couldn't help but had grown up. You are also here. She had already grown up. Looking at the two people in the room, originally, she felt a little apologetic about letting her daughter marry Zhang Hai because at that time, what are you standing here for? She also felt that Zhang Hai was not worthy of her daughter. Zhang Hai didn't feel anything bad. A year ago, he directly brought her a pair of slippers to have any advantages. Hearing Zhang Hai's words, short, Qi Li's body trembled for no reason. His appearance was average, seemed to be the first time Zhang Hai took any initiative to invite her to his private space. Nor did he have any money. Although there were two other women in this space, nor did he cause any trouble. This was indeed the first time. He had no potential to speak of. Qi Li was usually full of the aura of a queen. What could an unemployed person who graduated from a third-rate university have? Small details the only advantage was that Zhang Hai was quite honest in the face of Zhang Hai's invitation. She pulled him out at the critical moment to shut those people's mouths. Stepped on Zhang Hai's slippers for the first time as she walked in. If Qi Li could live with Zhang Hai, she would let her live with Zhang Hai. But the competition between the three women had already begun. This could be seen from the fact that Zhang Hai had come to her place during the new year. And her attitude wasn't very lively. Qi Li seemed to ask casually. The more a mother-in-law looked at her son-in-law, Zhang Hai and Xueqi just came back today. Unless the mother-in-law really did not like the son-in-law. Hearing Qi Li's words, but now it seemed that Zhang Hai was really hiding something. Who was already a little confused. According to Qi Li, said with a smile, the money he earned from selling yuan here was not lower than the total value of the yuan brought it to him today. This was just the money he earned from selling AI Xueqi is still far away. And AI She can only stand up to Qi Li as the mistress. The rest is scary to think about it. Oh, you just arrived today. Zhang Hai provided up the mother as soon as you arrived. Qi Li's mother liked him really more. Qi Li walked into the villa. Hearing Feng Yunchen's words, some beef from my also nodded. If you like in the villa, just tell me and I'll send it to you. Listening to their words, no matter how being so enthusiastic about it, you could tell that the atmosphere was not good. Smile. You are back. It seemed that his mother-in-law about what they were talking about. Changing. For the first time, he felt that he did something wrong. Hearing the door opening, by the way, the mother saw Zhang Hai home the dining table was not small, and then said to Zhang that there were only 3 people sitting at it. Especially when she saw the beef that Zhang Hai brought over, since you Qi Li's could not help but shine. You should go for a meal. She walked quickly to Zhang Hai and Qi Li changed the topic and looked at Zhang Hai and said to him, in fact, during that all the dishes were Zhang gave her the girl that Zhang Hai, but at that time seemed to be Qi Li's mother did not know the price. She nodded and was about to leave. She thought that Zhang Hai was just showing his filial piety by Qi Li's mother. So she did not care about it. And AI better not to the mid-autumn. Let's go to the kitchen and have a bite. It already very good. Hearing Qi Li's mother's words, but today the girl named Zhang to go to her house for dinner. At that time, after thinking it through, as mentioned, Zhang Hai glanced at AI's father and was very close with Qi Li's father. If Zhang Hai went, these two girls definitely couldn't go. And her father said that they were going to eat halal. Then, the Qi family brought her home and raised her as standing others up. However, it's okay. Perhaps because of the shock, fool them at home. This girl's reaction was slow and she was very stubborn. Hearing Qi Li's words in Zhang Hai's gaze, she couldn't live here for free. Xueqi was more sensible. She had to be a servant and take care of the Qi family. Zhang Hai didn't belong to her alone. It seemed that she liked this job since he had accompanied her for so many days. No one in the Qi family really treated her as a servant with her mother now. Although she was wearing servant's clothes, told her about Qi Li, although what Qi Li did that year was really wrong. Let's eat together. Zhang Hai owed her a debt. Brother-in-law yet. At this time, Ai Xiaoxi had already put herself in the position of Zhang Hai's girlfriend. She then said and began to look at the problem from Zhang Hai's perspective. Seemed to be in a dilemma. Definitely. Hearing Li's words, Ai Xiaoxi the girl relented. Who still had some resistance Zhang Hai couldn't help but feel a little confused. She didn't make it difficult for him. Looking at her, he was about to agree. Zhang Hai also spoke before him. This girl is really quite interesting. Tonight. You guys should go to bed early. Let's eat. It's not easy to go to my mother's place. The food will get cold. It's impossible for me to stay there. Beef. But Zhang Hai came back to stay. Looking at the happy scene in front of her, he is still my husband now. Li's mother also said with a smile. Directly interrupting Zhang Hai's words, she motioned for everyone to start eating. Zhang Hai didn't stand on ceremony. Ai Xiaoxi couldn't help but be speechless. Mother started eating. Shouldn't everyone take a step back in this matter to eat? But this Li had been taking a step back when facing Zhang Hai. They were also eating and chatting. But when facing them, the meal was still very harmonious. Didn't have a trace of mercy. Unknowingly, they were looking at her. The meal was finished, and she was also looking at them. There were still a lot of dishes left. Let's see how the situation goes. These were cleaned up by the servants. Let's go. Zhang Hai and the other three sat in the living room. Realized that there was no other way. Made a pot of tea. Zhang Hai and the others watched TV. The gazes were like a high voltage at the same time, constantly intersecting in front of Zhang Hai. Gradually darkened. At the critical moment, in Ice City in October, Hai's courage once again turned dark very early. To be exact, awkwardly nodding apologetically to Ai Xiaoxi all year round. During the hottest period of summer, since he had agreed to go, day could only last until 8 o'clock that this didn't happen. It was completely different from the central and western Huaxia was going to leave. The sky was still bright after 9 o'clock like a general who had won a battle. In October, she stood up, the sky turned glanced dark at even earlier, and Ai Xiaoxi after 7 o'clock and walked towards the door. It was already very dark outside. Zhang Hai also put on his coat. Therefore, there was really no concept of time and walked out with unknowingly. When the door was already past 9 o'clock in the evening, couldn't help but curl her lips. Just came back today. There's no other way. Then you must be a little tired, woman. I have already prepared your rooms. Win against that guy. You can go to sleep directly later. Glancing at her watch, Ai Xiaoxi's appearance, mother also stood up. Was very relaxed. She was preparing to go to bed. She lay back on the sofa. Old people, and then especially women like Li's mother, hearing her words, were originally in poor health. Couldn't help but smile. Moreover, they were too rich. This sister Chen is always so optimistic. In order to avoid being targeted, this kind of mentality is lived in seclusion. Sometimes she thinks a lot. Dancing would never happen to her. Okay, let's not care about her. The Qi Group's assets were tens of billions. Shaking her hair, people's hearts. Ai Xiaoxi threw this thought out of her mind. There were good people outside. Then sat opposite Feng Yunshan. What if she was kidnapped by others? Sometimes she thinks too much. Therefore, now that she has finally made up her mind to face a relationship with Zhang Hai, she also woke up very early. Things. However, it's useful to laugh happily around the courtyard or the neighborhood. She must laugh happily in the end. She also needed someone to accompany her. Basically, why don't we order a meal? Xueqi who accompanied her to walk around. Hamburgers. After thinking for a while, hearing Li's mother suddenly said, Zhang Hai couldn't help but be stunned for a moment because he still wanted to go back in their line of work. However, after his waist was poked by Li to be touched, Zhang Hai couldn't help but stand up. Zhang Hai sent beef and the like, Li's mother returned to her room. Eating these foods won't make them fat. After watching Li's mother close the door, Zhang Hai looked at Li helplessly. Not eating these things is also good for the body. Let's go to bed. Seeing Zhang Hai's gaze seemed to be very interested, couldn't help but blush a little. Feng Yunshan picked up the phone and made a call. She glanced at Zhang Hai. Zhang Hai didn't know what these two girls were going to eat at home, and led Zhang Hai to the second floor. Even if he knew, the largest bedroom on the second floor was downstairs with Li's home here. Zhang Hai was still thinking about what to do in the future. They had never lived here once. To be honest, today was an exception. Zhang Hai's character is really very troublesome. The first thing that caught Zhang Hai's eyes was a big bed. A little indecisive. There was a huge red bed sheet on top of the big bed. He can't control himself. The middle of the bed sheet was just drawn into a heart shape. A few months ago, there was a double happiness symbol rested inside and said, and there was a Mandarin duck pattern below. He won't take advantage of others. It was obvious that this was only used for weddings. Burrow. Looking at this big bed, but Zhang Hai couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed. Pounced on him, and Zhang was a bit familiar. Such a person can't survive more than 3 episodes in a TV series. You go to sleep. Now then she would go next door to sleep for the night. He is about to solve the knot in his heart. The current script and on the other side is Feng Yunshan and Ai Xiaoxi. Li didn't directly leave Zhang Hai also a little tangled. Nor did she leave. Don't worry, if you really want to come back tonight. She walked into the room before Zhang Hai. In front of Zhang Hai, looking at Zhang Hai, she didn't care about her image and directly lay on the bed. Li's heart was a little lost. Zhang Hai even saw the looming black under her skirt. Forget it. This scene, I'll listen to you tonight. Zhang Hai couldn't help but turn his face to the side. You have to go out with us. Then sat on a chair in the room, shaking his head, and turned on the TV. Zhang Hai threw such thoughts out of his mind. Hai's appearance, then looked at Li also turned around on the bed and looked at Zhang Hai. I have to go together? Aren't you going to take a shower first? Words. Seeing that Zhang Hai was staring at the TV while glancing at her from time to time. Of course you have to come together. Hearing
Tomorrow,
Chile's words,
the four of us will go
Zhang
out and
Hai
play
also
together.
nodded and walked
Well,
into the bathroom
let me
next to
think
him.
about what I want
But
to
after
play.
going in,
Let's
he
go
found
to
that
the
he didn't
amusement
have any
park.
clothes to change
Looking
into.
at Chile's
The
surprised
jacket
and
is
puzzled
fine,
eyes,
but Zhang Hai
what about
said
the
with
underwear?
certainty.
And then
He
he
didn't
began
put
to
any
arrange
clothes
where to
here.
go tomorrow.
If he washed
Hearing
this thing
Zhang
now,
Hai's words,
what would he wear
Chile
after washing
couldn't help
it?
but chuckle.
But if he didn't
Hey,
wash it,
are you very young now?
Hai, if he
Do
didn't
you want
want
to
to
go
go
to
to
the
the
amusement
then
park?
he wouldn't wash it.
Hearing Zhang Hai
After
mention
struggling
this
for a
place,
while,
Chile
Zhang
couldn't
Hai
help but
took a
ask.
shower in the big bathroom.
Then where do you
It was
think we
still
should
very
go if
simple
we
for a
don't
man
go
to
to the
take a
amusement
shower.
park?
He
Hearing
washed his hair with the hair
words,
foam,
simply
Zhang Hai
wiped his
shrugged.
body, and then rinsed
Well,
it. Let's go to the amusement park. At least,
After thinking
Zhang
about
Hai
it,
took a shower
Chile
like
really
this.
didn't know where the four
In
of
less
them would
than
go
10
together.
minutes,
So
Zhang
she
Hai
listened
had
to
already
Zhang
come
Hai.
out. But when he came out, he found that Chile had already
Chapter
changed her clothes.
588.
At this time,
Saying that it was an
Chile had
amusement
already
park
changed
brought
from
the
the almost
relationship between
unchanging
the two
off
of them
lady
closer
clothes and changed
It
into
made
pink
the atmosphere
pajamas.
in the car
But
less
this
lifeless.
pajamas seemed to be a
Since
little
they
too
had opened
small.
the topic,
Not
Chile
only was
also
there a
began
huge
to ask
V-shape on
Zhang
the
Hai
top,
about Zhang
but the
Hai's
bottom of
manner
the
in the
pajamas
United
only
States.
covered the bottom.
In her opinion,
the length of the hem
Zhang
barely
Hai's
covered
manner
her
was
underwear.
very important.
Her two straight,
Not only was
slender
it
long
Zhang
legs
Hai's
were
property,
exposed in front of
but it was
Zhang
also
Hai.
the main source of
Coupled
meat
with
for her
Chile's
four
pretty good
restaurants.
looks, these were
Zhang
all very
Hai once
important.
again shifted his
There's
gaze.
no problem with
Seeing
the manner.
Zhang Hai coming
I've
out,
already bought
Chile
the cattle
greeted
for
him with a
next
smile
year.
and looked at Zhang Hai and
15,000
said,
bulls
"You
and
are done
4,000
showering.
calves.
Ah,
Next
you
year,
take a shower.
I can sell about 2,000
When
calves."
Zhang Hai heard
which adds
Chile's
up to
words,
17,000
he didn't
bulls.
dare to look at her now.
I've reserved
Zhang Hai
1,000 bulls
bypassed
for you.
Chile and went
If
to
it's
the
not
sofa
enough,
next to him.
you can tell
He
me
didn't
and I'll
dare to
squeeze
sit
out
on the
some
bed.
more for you.
So he just watched
Hearing
TV.
Chile ask about the
Chile
cattle,
looked at Zhang
Zhang
Hai's
Hai thought
reaction
for a
and
moment and
chuckled.
said to Chile.
She walked into
In
the
fact,
bathroom and
when
hummed while
Zhang Hai
taking a
kept the
shower.
bulls,
He was
although
still
Zhang Hai's
dissatisfied
eyes
with
were watching
Chile.
TV,
But because
his
of
ears
AI
heard Chile's
Xiaoxi's
humming
matter,
and the sound of
Zhang
water.
Hai's
To
hostility
be
towards
honest,
Chile
it was
suddenly
suddenly
lessened a
torturous.
lot.
But fortunately,
However,
he had
Chile
already
didn't take too
reserved
long.
1,000 cows.
About 20 minutes
But if
later,
it wasn't enough,
she came out
Zhang
of the
Hai
bathroom.
could make some more.
Zhang Hai glanced at her unconsciously
1,000
and couldn't
bulls is
help but
enough.
feel his heart beating
After all,
faster.
I'm not
At
going
this
to open a
time,
branch.
although Chile was
But
still
in
wearing
addition to
pajamas,
our
it was
restaurant's
obvious that
high-end
she had
goods are
removed the
still
vest
lacking.
and underpants that
I'm
were
afraid
supposed to
that
be under
sooner
the
or
pajamas.
later, people
This
will get
scene
tired of eating
was
beef.
a bit fierce.
Hearing Zhang Hai's words, Chile couldn't help but say with some
Chapter
hesitation.
590.
But Zhang
Is
Hai
there
chuckled
anything
when
good
he
on
heard her
TV?
words. I have
Looking
a lot
at
of
Zhang
high-end
Hai's
goods,
slightly sluggish
lobsters,
all
all
more
more
than
than 30
walked
caddies,
over.
especially
While
long
wiping the
sea
water
cucumbers
droplets
on her hair.
double-headed
She
abalones.
climbed onto the bed
By
casually.
next year,
Under
the fish
Zhang
I
Hai's
raised will be
gaze,
almost ready
she
to be
sat
produced.
cross-legged and looked
There
at
are
the TV
salmon,
in the distance.
grouper, dragon
At this
crab,
time,
king
under
crab,
Zhang Hai's
nine-joint
gaze,
shrimp,
and
so
Chile's
on.
2 points
There
in
is
the forest
also
below were
tuna.
completely visible.
Around July next
but
year,
she didn't seem to
there
care
should
at
also
all.
be a batch of
Cough,
Yangtze
I
River
don't think
grenadier
so.
fish and
To
large
be
yellow
honest,
croaker fish.
Zhang Hai really
As
didn't
soon as
have
he heard
any intention
Chile's
of
words,
watching TV at
Zhang
this time.
Hai also
He just
calculated
turned
the
on the
high-end
TV
goods in his
casually
fishery
because he didn't
but
know
after
what to do.
calculating,
If there's
Zhang
nothing
Hai
good
was
to
really
watch,
stunned.
then let's
There
sleep.
were really a lot of
Hearing
high-end
Zhang
goods
Hai's
in his
words,
fishery.
Chile
Although
tilted her
Zhang
head
Hai's
and looked
fish
at
are said
Zhang
to be
Hai with a
farmed,
smile.
except for the
Hearing
small
what she
seedlings.
said, it can
Zhang
be said
Hai
that these
also
fish all
nodded.
imitate natural
Come
growth.
up and sleep.
Take the salmon,
Seeing
for example.
Zhang Hai nod,
Zhang Hai's
Chile
salmon
also
is a
patted the
3-year
position next to
Atlantic
her
salmon.
and said to Zhang Hai,
In fact,
"Forget
the salmon
it.
we traditionally
I'll just
talk
sleep on the
about
sofa
refers
for
to
a
the
night."
Atlantic salmon. Hearing
There is
Chile's
no
salmon
words.
in the Pacific
Zhang
Ocean,
Hai gently pushed his
90%
glasses
of
and
the
took
salmon
a
in
deep breath.
Asia is actually
It was
chum
better to be
salmon.
calm at this time.
This fish looks almost
Sleep
the
on the
same as
sofa?
salmon. Are you
The only
afraid that I
difference is
will
that
eat
chum
you?
salmon has
Really,
small black
you are
spots
not
on its
cute at
dorsal
all.
fin.
You
But
are my
salmon
husband.
only has
Do you
them
know
on its
that?
body, not
Hearing
on its
Zhang
dorsal
Hai's
fin.
words,
Therefore, there
Chile
were many
suddenly
businesses
said to
that called
Zhang
salmon
Hai.
XX salmon,
Hearing
such
Chile's
as red
words,
salmon and so on.
Zhang Hai
But the
couldn't help
problem
but
is
be
that it is not
speechless.
salmon just
And
because
the
you
most
call it
important
salmon.
thing is,
The
if my
difference
mother
is
knows
actually
that you are
quite big.
sleeping on the sofa,
But there are too
wouldn't
few
we be
people who know
exposed?
this.
And the biggest
After
exporter of
hesitating,
salmon is Norway.
Chile looked at Zhang Hai and said
In the early
faintly,
days,
after
Norway's
that,
salmon
she
couldn't be
lowered her
sold.
head.
This was
She
because
didn't
the
say
main
such
exporting
words.
country,
Well, Japan, ate sashimi. Looking at
In the
Chili's
early
appearance,
days,
Salmon
salmon had
Hai's
to be
head was
cooked.
also a little
They
confused.
didn't eat raw salmon.
He didn't think about
Later
it.
on, he was
Norway
sleeping on the
exported
sofa.
salmon to Japan.
How could Chili's mother
Gradually,
know?
they started to
But at
eat
this
raw
time,
salmon.
there was
The
no
most
such
popular
thought in his
time was in the
mind.
1980s.
Inexplicably,
Norway
he
exported a
turned off
large
the
amount of
TV
seafood
and then
to
lay
Japan.
on the side of the big bed
After
with his
implementing
clothes
the
on.
Japan plan for
Do you
15
sleep with
years,
your clothes on?
Japan's habit
Leaning
of
her
eating
head
raw
next to
salmon was
Zhang Hai's
completely
ear.
changed.
Chili
Hugged
later,
Zhang Hai from
Hua
behind,
Xia also
and then
became the
whispered
main
in his
force
ear.
of eating salmon.
Hearing Chili's
But
words,
this fish is far
Zhang
from being
Hai
a
didn't
threat.
know what to say.
But it is really not
I
easy
heard
to
that
catch
sleeping
it.
in level 1
Its
is
living
very
range
good
is
for a
very
person's
limited.
body, and
But
it
I
only
used to
lives
live
in the
alone.
Atlantic Ocean.
I was really afraid
After
that if
all,
something happened,
it is difficult to
I
fool
wouldn't have a
people who
place to
understand
escape.
the meaning of
But
chum
now,
salmon. I
It is
have you by
precisely
my
because
side.
of this that now
So
in the
I want to
Pacific
give it a
Ocean,
try. Seeing that
Japan,
Zhonghai didn't
and
speak,
South Korea are
Chile
eating farmed
whispered in a
salmon.
low voice.
But generally,
Are you
farmed
really
salmon
ready?
can't eat wild
To be
shrimp
honest,
and plankton.
if a woman threw
so
herself
its meat
into
is
his
white.
arms like this,
If you want to turn it
Zhonghai
red,
would definitely do it
you
first.
need to feed it
But
artificial
the woman behind him was
astaxanthin.
Chile.
But if you
so
feed it too
Zhonghai
much,
had to suppress
it will
this
become
thought.
red. After
If you
taking a
feed
deep
it too
breath
little,
and calming down
it
the
won't be
anxiety in
sold
his
at a high
heart,
price.
Zhonghai said
So
to
it is
Chile,
still very complicated.
what is there to prepare
Moreover,
for?
I am
If
your
you feed
wife.
it too much,
You are my husband.
Zhonghai doesn't
Isn't
know
it
whether it
normal
is
to do
harmful to the
this?
human body.
Hearing
But he doesn't
Zhonghai's
need
words,
to feed it anyway.
Chile hugged
Because there are a
Zhonghai
lot
even
of
tighter
small
because she could
shrimps in
hear
his
that
fish farm.
Zhonghai was still
Because
hesitating.
Zhonghai's seaweeds absorb spiritual energy.
Feeling Chile's
Just like the
movement
pastor
behind
in
him,
Zhonghai's
Zhonghai
manner,
hesitated
they
for a
naturally have
moment before
spiritual
saying to
energy.
Chile,
This
to tell you the
spiritual
truth,
energy
I am
attracts a
indebted to your
large number
chi
of
family.
plankton that feed
I
on
have
these
never
seaweeds.
denied this point.
And these plankton
After
attract
all,
a large
you
number of
extended a
creatures that
helping
feed
hand
on
when
these
I
things.
needed it the most.
In addition to the
If the
small
chi
squid and
family
small
has any
octopus
orders,
that Zhonghai
as long as
raises,
I can do it,
Zhonghai's
I will
fish farm
definitely
has a
help.
large number of
As for
Arctic
me,
sweet shrimps.
I admit,
These shrimps
I originally
swim here
had
on
a
their
very
own.
good impression
The
of you.
number is unusually
Feeling
large.
Chile's movement
Forming
behind
the
him,
bottom of the
Zhonghai
biological
hesitated
chain.
for a moment
At
before speaking
least,
to Chile.
the fish in Zhonghai's fish
Originally,
farm are
when
difficult
Chile
to
heard
finish.
Zhonghai say that
The
he was just
salmon was
grateful
already
to the
3
Chi
years
family,
old when they
her
bought
body
it.
trembled for no
so
reason.
it wasn't a problem
But
for
after
them to
hearing
eat
the
these
following
things.
words, she hugged
Recently,
Zhonghai even tighter.
Zhonghai's salmon and the like
and I'm
have grown
saying
quite big.
If we could live
It is
together like an
estimated
ordinary
that it will
husband
not
and
be a
wife,
problem to sell
maybe
them
we
next
wouldn't be
year.
like today.
Of course, Zhonghai
that's
can
not
also
very
choose to let
possible.
these fish swim
After
back
all,
to the river
back
he
then,
built to lay
I
eggs,
really wasn't
so that
worthy
he
of
can
your
get more
attention.
salmon.
But
Feeling
there is a
Chile's
problem.
movement,
That is,
the
Zhonghai
salmon will
sighed.
die after
He
laying
knew
eggs,
what level he was
and
at
it
back
can't
then.
be sold at a high
Why
price.
would Chile like
So
him?
this is a trade-off
Just like
problem.
what Chile's
But
mother
Zhonghai
said.
believes that
Zhonghai
Edward
was more than a
Anderson
year
and the
ago.
others will solve it.
He was not handsome.
I didn't
His
expect
family
you to have
background
so
was
many
not
good
good.
things.
He had no
It
potential.
seems that after
and
a
he
while,
did not know how
I
to
will
speak
have to
well.
check again to see
If
what can
such
be
a man
used
had
in my
found an
restaurant.
ordinary woman to marry
Hearing
and
that
have
there are
children
so many
with,
good things in
his
Zhonghai's
life would
fish
have
farm.
passed.
Chile
However,
couldn't help but
he
be
had
stunned.
married Chile,
She didn't
the
know
daughter
that
of
there are
heaven.
so many fun
Not
things
to mention
in Zhonghai's
Chile's
manner. Anyone would think that the two were actually not a match.
Lobster,
It was that
abalone,
simple. Sea
Cinderella
cucumber
could marry
king
a crab,
prince, tuna,
but the stinky
salmon,
hooligan married a
grouper,
princess.
dragon crab.
This was the most realistic
Plus the
problem.
beef provided by
Hearing
Zhonghai.
Zhonghai's
All of
slightly
a sudden,
self-deprecating
Chile
words,
found that it was
Chile
just
suddenly
around the
hugged
corner for her
Zhonghai
to
tightly
dominate
and
the
said
high-level
seriously,
catering industry
"But now
in the
you are not
capital.
the same as before.
If you want to go,
Although I don't
you
know
are
why I
welcome
like
at any
you.
time. I am very sure that what
Hearing
I like
her
is not
words,
your money,
Zhonghai
not your
smiled.
bull, but you as a
Although
person.
Chile may be a little
if you still
embarrassed
have
when
me
she
in your
sees
heart,
Aphrodite and the
then
others.
let's start
If she
over.
wants to go,
I think
then
you understand
Zhonghai
what I'm
won't
talking
mind.
about.
Okay,
But it's already
I can
November
tell you,
now.
in addition
There
to
is
them,
nothing
I actually
fun
have
to go
other women
there.
outside such
When
as
will you
Aphrodite.
fish? I cannot give
Hearing
them any
what
status,
Zhonghai said,
but I can't leave
Chile
them alone
also
and start
seriously
over
thought
with you.
about it.
You can
In
say that I
fact,
am
to be
greedy,
honest,
or that I am a
she
scumbag.
wants to go with
But I am
Zhonghai
indeed
now.
a scumbag.
But the problem is
in
that
the
she
face
can't,
of temptation,
because the
my
Chi family
resistance
still
still
depends
depends
on her to
helmet.
Because I don't know
Now
what
that
I
she
am
goes to
holding on to in my
Zhonghai,
heart.
it means that she
Hearing
has to give up
Chile's words,
control of the Chi family,
Zhonghai brought
which
this
she
matter
can't
to the
agree
surface
to.
for the first time.
Huaxia people and
Zhonghai
foreigners
would
have
not
a
give
little
up on these
essential
women.
difference. This was
That
also
is
a
the
big
desire
problem
to
for him to have a
control.
serious
For
friendship.
example,
If it was
foreigner
more than a year
establishes
ago,
a company,
Chile and
shares or
Zhonghai
something,
said,
they must
let's
firmly
be
hold
together.
it in their hands.
Zhonghai would be
But for the
conflicted.
operation and
But if
management
something
of
really
the company,
happened,
they
he
are
would
more
still be
inclined to find a
wholeheartedly with
professional
Chile.
manager or someone
He
they
could also
cultivated
endure the
themselves,
temptation of
given
the
a certain
outside
proportion
world,
of dividends,
because he was a
tie
man
this
with
person
a wife.
to their own chariot,
But now,
and let him manage
this
the
wife
company.
of his was
For
almost
example,
non-existent.
for Walton,
who is very familiar with Zhonghai,
he already
is
wanted
now
to
the
start a
Walton
new
family's
relationship.
Walmart,
Under
managed
such
by an
circumstances,
outsider.
it
But
was
the people in
inevitable for
China
him
are
to indulge
different.
himself a
When a
little.
person in
But
China
now that things
establishes
had already
a company,
happened,
some
must
women
be in
could
charge
be
of it
broken,
himself.
but some
When his
he could
control
not.
is over,
Because
even
if
if
he
his
was
son
really
or daughter
good
is
to
a
only
waste,
one woman
a
and
prodigal,
turned his back
or
on
a
other
moron,
women, this
then
company
in the
will
eyes of other
definitely be
women,
passed on to his child.
he was also the one
He
who
will not
betrayed
find
them.
a manager and give
Zhonghai
out
was
some of his due
unwilling to
dividends.
abandon these people.
More than
This was the
95%
most
of the enterprises in China are all
This.
family businesses.
Hearing Zhang
and the
Hai's
Qi family
words,
is the same.
Qi Li's hand,
If he wants
which
her
was
to give
originally
up,
holding
she will
Zhang
think
Hai,
about it later.
could not
At
help
least
but
for
loosen
now,
a little.
it is impossible.
She wanted to reconcile
Probably
with
in
Zhang
March,
Hai,
April,
she wanted to
or
be
May
with
where
Zhang
I
Hai.
am.
She
You
wanted
have
to give
to ask
herself
my
to Zhang
fisherman
Hai
for the
tonight.
specific time.
But she must think carefully
Last year,
about what
when
Zhang
Zhang
Hai
Hai was
said.
raising fish,
Zhang Hai
he
had
had
more
heard
than
that it
one
would take
woman.
at least a year
This
to
was
raise these
different
fishes.
from breaking up with a
If
mistress.
1 year wasn't too
Perhaps
long,
at this time,
then it
in
would
Zhang
take 2
Hai's
years.
heart.
The position
However,
of those
they
women was
didn't
much
think that
more
Zhang
important
Hai
than
had
her.
something to do
There
with
were no
spiritual
fetters
qi.
between them.
So,
If she
these
really
fish
wanted
raised
to
for
start a
half a year are
relationship
not
with Zhang
smaller than
Hai,
the fish raised
it
for
meant
1.5
that she had
years
to
by
accept
others.
those. If they are
Unless
raised
she
for
was
another
just
half a
playing with
year,
Zhang Hai,
it will be almost
then
the
it did
same as
not
the fish
matter.
raised for 2 or
But
3
she
years
did
by
not know
others.
if she was ready
When
to
the
share
time
Zhang
comes,
Hai with
there
other
will be
women.
no problem at
Just
all.
like AI
Okay,
Xueqi,
I will
she
call
had
you in
always regarded
advance when the
herself
time
as Zhang
comes.
Hai's legal
I will
wife.
definitely go
It
when the
seemed
fish
that as
are
long as she
released.
came back,
Hearing
those
Zhang
snakes,
Hai's
insects,
words,
rats,
Qi Li
and
said
ants would all run
seriously.
away.
At this
But now
time,
these
the
snakes,
car slowly
insects,
entered
rats,
Qi
and
Li's
ants had gone
neighborhood.
deep into this
After
home,
parking the
and
car in
Zhang
front
Hai
of
had
Lu Li's
become one
villa,
of them.
Zhang
If she
Hai
wanted to
also
find
got
the
out of the
equality
car
and
with
balance
some
between
things.
men and women, it would be a little too presumptuous. Think about it carefully. This is also a problem between us. I'll leave this problem to you to decide. Whether we stay as we are, be friends, or go one step further, it's all up to you. Zhang Hai felt Qi Li's hesitation behind him, so he gently patted her hand, sat up from the bed again, and went to lie down on the sofa. This time, Qi Li did not pull Zhang Hai because she also felt that she really had to think about these things carefully. Zhang Hai was not willing to touch her when he was completely undecided. This was Zhang Hai's promise to her, and also his protection for her, so she really had to think about it carefully. On the other side, Zhang Hai, who came to the sofa, suddenly felt as if he had become a saint. Zhang Hai did not like this kind of saint appearance. Maybe it was because of the previous feelings, or maybe Zhang Hai was really interested in Qi Li. He did not want to do anything excessive in such a situation. Qi Li was different from Aphrodite and the others. Aphrodite and the others originally only wanted to stay by Zhang Hai's side, that was all. She was different from Feng Yunqin. Feng Yunqin had already made it very clear that she wanted to be Zhang Hai's lover on the first day she met Zhang Hai. She was also different from Perwalton and Selena Gomez. The relationship between the three of them was probably just that of friends. They did not think of marrying Zhang Hai, and Zhang Hai did not think of making any promises to them. It was that simple. The only one who was similar to Qi Li was Ai Xiaoxi, but Ai Xiaoxi was just preparing to sell herself at the beginning. Just like Zhang Hai in the beginning. She sold herself for money, and the subsequent ideas came later. The story between Zhang Hai and Qi Li was far from simple as it seemed. The bond between them was very deep. Finally, Zhang Hai took a deep breath and fell asleep on the sofa. He took one last look at Qi Li, who was lying on the bed. Chapter 591. Hiss. Sitting in the car, Zhang Hai moved his arms, but he felt that his whole body was sore. In fact, this was also his own fault. How can his body not be sore after sleeping on the sofa for a night? Even if he has 4 times the physical fitness. You just want to do it. There is a bed, but you don't sleep. You sleep on the sofa. You sleep on the bed, so you must do that with me. Looking at Zhang Hai's miserable grin, Qi Li couldn't help but pat him. Looking at Zhang Hai's comment, she was really angry and funny. Aren't you afraid that you can't control yourself? Rolling his eyes at Qi Li, Zhang Hai said snappily. Hee hee. Hearing Zhang Hai's words, Qi Li's mouth unconsciously raised. Zhang Hai is afraid that he can't control himself. It means that Zhang Hai likes me and is very interested in my body. Otherwise, he won't be unable to control himself. Hearing her laughter, Zhang Hai glanced at her snappily. She is really gloating. Okay, we are almost at your house. Looking at Zhang Hai leaning there, Qi Li said to him. Now Qi Li was driving her family's car. It wasn't a good car, but it wasn't particularly bad. It was a fake SUV from Infiniti, QX50. The top version was less than 500,000 yuan. For people like Qi Li, this car was just a car to drive when going out to play, and it couldn't go to places that were too outdoor. This kind of car was the so-called city SUV. Such a car couldn't be sold at a high price in the United States because everyone drove MPVs and sedans in the city. SUVs were driven when they wanted to go outside. Not many people drove such a car in the city. But in Huaxia, this kind of city SUV was still very popular. They liked to drive such a car in the city. Okay. Hearing Qi Li's words, Zhang Hai also took out his phone and called Ai Xiaoxi and Feng Yunqin. After making the call, Ai Xiaoxi and Feng Yunqin quickened their steps. When the car stopped downstairs of Zhang Hai's house, Ai Xiaoxi and Feng Yunqin were already waiting for Zhang Hai and Qi Li. Seeing the car driving over, the two women opened the back door and got in. When they got in, they couldn't help shivering. It was October in Bing City, and it was indeed cold. It could be said that this was the coldest time in Bing City as the temperature would drop below 10 degrees Celsius in the morning and evening. Although it was still hot at noon, it was difficult to reach 20 degrees Celsius. It was only 5 or 6 degrees Celsius in the morning and evening. At this time, Bing City's winter was jealous of the heaters south of the Yangtze River. The heaters had not started heating yet. It could be said that the first half of October and the second half of April were the coldest times in Bing City. After this period, it would be much warmer. Feng Yunqin and Ai Xiaoxi's physical fitness was good. After all, they had been eating Zhang Hai's beef. but they couldn't stand the cold. Moreover, these two girls were models, so they didn't wear much clothes. After standing downstairs for less than 3 minutes, they were almost freezing. When they got into the car, they kept rubbing their hands and shaking their legs, hoping to warm up. It's so cold. We can just play at home. Why are we going to the amusement park? Looking at Zhang Hai and Qili in front, Feng Yunchen said unhappily. To be honest, this kind of weather was the best time to play at home. This is Zhang Hai's idea. Ask him. Hearing Feng Yunchen's words, Qili shrugged her shoulders, indicating that she couldn't help. Huaxia women's nature was to listen to men. Of course, there were a few exceptions. We haven't been to the amusement park together. Let's go and play. Hearing Qili's words, Zhang Hai also turned his head and said to the two girls behind him. Hearing Zhang Hai's words, the two girls couldn't help but roll their eyes at him. I have been there with you before. We went there several times when we were in junior high school. Zhang Hai just finished his words. Feng Yunchen had already said. Okay. When they were in junior high school, they did go to the amusement park many times. She went there with you before? No, then I have to go with you. But who would have thought that when Feng Yunchen's voice fell, Qili immediately added a sentence. Feng Yunchen and Zhang Hai had been to the amusement park, so she had to go too. That's right, I want to go too. Well, at this time, AI Xueqi also said. Feng Yunchen didn't expect that her words directly smashed her own foot. She rolled her eyes at the two sisters who were not firm in their stance. She could only give in helplessly. 3 votes against 1 vote, and she was not so resistant to going there to play. Okay, let's go to the amusement park. Seeing that no one had any objections, Zhang Hai smiled and patted the front passenger seat and said to Qili. Hearing Zhang Hai's words, Qili also stepped on the accelerator and drove forward. Bing City's economy was not very developed. Based on China's GDP ranking, Bing City was only ranked 27th. It was not considered a first-tier city in China. That's why Bing City did not have any amusement parks like most cities in China. Like Happy Valley, which was common in all cities in China, Bing City did not have any amusement parks. Bing City did not have any amusement parks like Happy Valley. There was only one Bing City amusement park in Bing City, and it was very old. But obviously, this type of amusement park could not attract many customers. But the people in Bing City had no other choice, so they could only go there. The location of this amusement park was quite far from Zhang Hai's house. There were 3 landmark buildings there. In front of them was Bing City's biggest temple, Jilu Temple. Next to Jilu Temple was Electronics World, which was Bing City's biggest computer installation facility. Behind them was Bing City's amusement park, which Zhang Hai and the rest were going to today. After driving to the amusement park, Zhang Hai and the rest did not say anything. They bought the tickets and entered the amusement park. The weather was getting warmer, and it was November. There were still many people here. Many adults brought their children to the amusement park, and they were having fun. After Zhang Hai and the rest entered the amusement park, Qili, Feng Yunchen, and AI Xueqi attracted a lot of attention. Basically, when they walked past, they would attract a lot of attention. Qili was the type of cool female CEO. Feng Yunchen had the image of a perfect royal sister, while AI Xueqi had the image of a young and beautiful girl. As they walked by, they really attracted a lot of attention. Of course, there were also people who tried to talk to them, but when they saw Zhang Hai's height of more than 190 centimeters and his rather sturdy build, most of them withered away. And those who dared to come over were ignored by the 4 people, embarrassing them to death. After entering the amusement park, the 3 girls who did not like the amusement park went crazy. Roller coasters, bumper cars, things that were similar to torrential rush, and haunted houses. They all went 1 round. Zhang Hai also had a good time. The best amusement park that Zhang Hai had ever been to was the largest Disneyland in Oakland. But compared to these things abroad, the domestic amusement park was closer to life. Unknowingly, Zhang Hai and the rest played until 1 p.m. The 3 girls were a little hungry, and Zhang Hai was almost done. Since there was nothing else to play, Zhang Hai waved his hand and went to eat. After the 4 of them left the amusement park, they were ready to eat. At this time, it was up to Zhang Hai. If it was about other things, Zhang Hai might be very ordinary. For example, Ask him where to buy beautiful clothes. Ask him where to find bars and nightclubs. Jiang Hai did not know these things, but if you asked him where to find delicious food, then you asked the right person. Jiang Hai asked the three girls what they wanted to eat, and they decided to go to Central Street to eat buns. The steamed buns that Jiang Hai mentioned were called Kai Feng steamed buns. It was originally a state-run restaurant. The biggest feature of the so-called state-run restaurant was that the waiters were quite good. If you don't want to eat, you don't have to. They were all paid by the state, just like the current civil servants. Their attitude was quite bad, and the environment was also very ordinary. In the summer, the steamers that were thrown outside would have flies on them. However, the main reason why people came to eat here was because the steamed buns here were really delicious. When the buns were popular, people even had to line up at the same table. This restaurant was really good. In Bing City, there were only 2 restaurants that had the best buns. One was this restaurant, and the other was Gubyuli Buns. Of course, some people said that Gubyuli buns were not delicious, and this was the truth. However, the stuffing had to be differentiated. The fresh shrimp stuffing in Gubyuli's steamed buns tasted pretty good, and the steamed buns in this restaurant's soup dumplings were pretty good. Most importantly, the restaurant had been converted into a private one, so the sanitary conditions were a lot better. After parking the car here and paying the parking fee, Jiang Hai's group of 3 walked into the bun shop. Because it was changed to a private business, there was no such thing as sharing tables. The originally simple steamed buns were now added with stir-fried dishes. It was more like a restaurant than a simple steamed bun shop. After Jiang Hai's group of 4 sat down, they ordered 4 trays of steamed buns and then some dishes. Of course, Jiang Hai's order of double-cooked pork was inevitable. Maybe it was because when Jiang Hai and the others arrived, it was already around 2 o'clock in the afternoon. At this time, there were no guests, so the dishes were served quite quickly. Not long after, 4 trays of steamed buns and stir-fried dishes were served. After the steamed buns were served, the 3 girls couldn't wait to pick them up. But when their chopsticks touched them, the steamed buns with very thin skin leaked out. Seeing this scene, the 3 girls couldn't help but look at Jiang Hai. What's going on? Their buns are like this. The skin is very thin, so when you pick it up, you have to pick it up. After you put it into the bowl, you have to cool it first, and then suck out the soup before eating the buns. Otherwise, you will be scalded. Looking at the gazes of the 3 women, Jiang Hai smiled. Under their gazes, he picked up a steamed bun and put it on the plate that he had already prepared. After blowing on the steamed bun and taking a sip of the soup, he began to eat the steamed bun. When the steamed bun entered his mouth, Jiang Hai couldn't help but nod. Delicious. Chapter 592. Hey, you're here. Opening the door, Huang Yunfei looked at Jiang Hai standing outside the door and said with a smile, "What can I do for you?" Looking at Huang Yunfei who opened the door, Jiang Hai also came in and looked at the people who had already come here and said to Huang Yunfei with a smile. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Huang Yunfei also took a look. "Help me pack the candy box first. The balloons and other things are almost finished." Glancing at the room, although it was a mess, everything was almost done. Now Fu Yuan and Xiang Hua are playing with balloons, and they will go downstairs in a while. Now there is still a little trouble in packing the candy, and the manpower is not enough. Okay. After talking to Huang Yunfei, Jiang Hai went to the table over there and greeted Huang Yunfei's mother, who was organizing people to pack the candy box, and began to do it. These candy boxes were ordered from the internet. A few people are responsible for folding the box, a few people are responsible for taking the candy, and a few people are responsible for packing the box and sealing it, then putting it in a circle and tying it up. Now, weddings basically use such candy boxes, and they look good. The ones sent to the car are all big candy boxes for cigarettes. This needs to be packed separately. Now it is packed on the table on the wedding day. Jiang Hai is here. Your wife didn't come back? Looking at Jiang Hai sitting here, Huang Yunfei's mother couldn't help but ask with a smile. Oh, she's back, but she's a little busy today. She'll come back tomorrow. Looking at the smiling Huang Yunfei's mother, Jiang Hai also said with a smile. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Huang Yunfei's mother couldn't help but nod. Hey, your wife manages such a big company. It's inevitable that she's busy. You are really lucky to have such a good wife. How many years of hard work do you have? Looking at Zhang Hai, Huang Yunfei's mother couldn't help but say with emotion. Hearing Huang Yunfei's mother's words, Zhang Hai couldn't help but smile awkwardly. He didn't answer this, and he didn't know how to answer. Mom, what are you talking about? Now Zhang Hai's money is not less than his wife's. However, after Huang Yunfei heard his mother's words, he couldn't help but complain. After hearing her son's words, Huang Yunfei's mother couldn't help but look at Zhang Hai with a surprised expression. Then she chuckled and let this topic pass. Zhang Hai and Huang Yunfei used to be neighbors. Not only did the two live in the same community, but they also lived in the same building. Huang Yunfei was 1 year younger than Zhang Hai, but Huang Yunfei's mother and Zhang Hai's parents were high school classmates. Later they started working in the same factory. However, Huang Yunfei's grandfather's family was somewhat capable. Zhang Hai's parents were just workers, while Huang Yunfei's mother worked in the government. Although she was just an ordinary worker, she was naturally well treated because she worked in the office all day long. And this person, to put it bluntly, was somewhat snobbish. In the past, when Qili's father resigned and went to the capital to make a living, she didn't even let Huang Yunfei and Qili play together. Later, when Qili's family became powerful, she even went to visit them. She even wanted to let Huang Yunfei and Qili date. She was quite ambitious. If Qili couldn't, then Qili's 2 younger sisters could. But later on, there was no need to think about it. Qili's family naturally wouldn't agree, but she never gave up. Until 2 years ago, when Qili married Zhang Hai, she finally gave up. But it took her 2 years to accept her current daughter-in-law, and she was still somewhat dissatisfied. Zhang Hai was still very familiar with Huang Yunfei's mother, but he had a good relationship with Huang Yunfei, so he selectively ignored this problem. After finishing the gift box, Zhang Hai went to tie up the balloons. I'm sorry, you also know my mother. Recently, she has been going through menopause. Now she speaks without thinking. When tying up the balloons outside, Huang Yunfei couldn't help but whisper to Zhang Hai. Hearing his words, Zhang Hai smiled and waved his hand. It's okay, I have known you for more than 20 years. How can I not know what your mother is like? I selectively ignored it. Looking at Huang Yunfei, Zhang Hai smiled casually. To be honest, he didn't care much about this at first. By the way, I just heard you say that your wife is coming tomorrow? Qili is back? At this time, Fu Yuan next to him also looked at Zhang Hai and asked with a look of surprise, because he remembered that when Zhang Hai came back, he clearly didn't bring Qili. Well, Qili is also back, tomorrow. It depends on the situation, maybe Qili and I will go, or maybe there will be more people going. After thinking about it, Zhang Hai said with a little embarrassment. After getting along with each other yesterday, although the 3 women didn't get along well, at least in front of Zhang Hai, they were not so hostile. After eating steamed buns yesterday, Zhang Hai and the others strolled around Central Street again. In the evening, after Qili sent Zhang Hai and the others home, she went back to her and Zhang Hai's new house to live in. Last year, during the new year, she actually lived there. It was really ironic that after she and Zhang Hai got married, she only lived there for 1 night, and after Zhang Hai left, she had lived there many times. As for Zhang Hai, he had a good night's sleep last night. This morning, after eating breakfast, he came over to help. As for the people who will go to the wedding tomorrow, Zhang Hai hasn't figured it out yet. According to his idea, if 4 people go together, well, it will be very awkward, but if he leaves others at home, he is somewhat embarrassed. Hey, men become bad when they are rich, they become bad. Hearing Zhang Hai's words, Huang Yunfei couldn't help but sigh. You have the nerve to say that? Do you think we don't know how messed up you are? Glancing at Huang Yunfei, Zhang Hai gave him a middle finger, and then said with a look of contempt. Hearing Zhang Hai's words, Huang Yunfei shook his head proudly. It's my fault, I'm also a bad man, haha. By the way, after helping tonight, don't leave, let's go out and play. Huang Yunfei looked at the people around him and said with a mysterious face. Hearing his words, the men present raised their eyebrows. What? You want to have a bachelor's night? Hearing Huang Yunfei's words, Xueqi asked strangely. Flying chess. Don't know why, when Zhang Hai heard bachelor's night, he always thought of flying chess. Flying chess? Tomorrow, I will be a married man. We can't stay up too late at night. Tomorrow morning, we will pick up the bride at 6 o'clock, and we will just take a simple bath at night. Hearing Zhang Hai's words, Huang Yunfei looked at Zhang Hai with contempt. Bath. Hearing Huang Yunfei's words, needless to say, this kid is definitely not going to just take a bath. Although there are many decent bathhouses in Bing City, there are also many not-so-decent bathhouses. In fact, all Huaxia is the same. The average fast food refers to massage, pedicure, hair washing, etc. The better ones are some baths, and the better ones are some entertainment clubs. These are all tacit things that all Huaxia men know, but when he heard what he said, Zhang Hai's heart was a little resistant. Okay, don't talk nonsense. Bachelor's night? Stay chaste for your wife tonight. If you meet the police, tomorrow is your wedding day, and also your divorce day. Zhang Hai patted Huang Yunfei and said with a serious face. TSK so boring. You are a man with a full stomach who doesn't know the hunger of a hungry man. You have Qi Li, and that girl, what's her name again? Oh, by the way, AI Xueqi, these two girls are the best. You have a good night, but you don't think about us. Hearing that Zhang Hai is not interested in going out to play, Huang Yunfei can't help but say with some jealousy. If his wife is as beautiful as Qi Li or AI Xueqi, he will also not be willing to go out. Don't be ridiculous. You're getting married tomorrow. Be honest. When we get to America. Alright, I don't think you'll be able to have fun there. Fu Yuan and Su Wei are both single. You should just give up. Looking at Huang Yunfei's expression, Zhang Hai said with a smile. When Fu Yuan and Su Wei heard Zhang Hai say that there is a program in Winthrop, they can't help but raise their eyebrows. Compared to having fun here, they were more interested in Caucasian women and the like. While the group was talking and laughing here, they had already tied up the balloons. Then everyone drove to the venue and looked at the decorations there. There was also the wedding day, which was tomorrow's speech with the MC. After all this was done, the sky was dark. When it was time for dinner, Zhang Hai deliberately called Feng Yunqin and AI Xueqi. When Huang Yunfei and the others found out that Zhang Hai was not dragging 2 people, but 3 people, they despised Zhang Hai even more. Especially Feng Yunqin, Xianghua and Fu Yuan knew her. After all, they were all classmates. This is a super beauty. Now that she is with Zhang Hai, it has caused a lot of harm to these married and unmarried people. Feng Yunqin and AI Xueqi also met Zhang Hai's brothers in advance. After dinner, Zhang Hai and the others left first. As for whether Huang Yunfei had a bachelor's night, Zhang Hai probably didn't. Because halfway through the meal, his father came and said that he came to thank Zhang Hai and the others. He can't go to a bachelor's night with his father, right? Wouldn't his mother and his wife tear them apart? But in any case, this busy day was over. After Zhang Hai, Feng Yunqin, and AI Xueqi returned home, they washed up and went to bed. After all, early in the morning, he still has to help. But before going to bed, he has to figure out who will be going tomorrow. You and Qi Li go. We don't have a legitimate reason to go. Besides, we have seen your brothers. It doesn't matter if you go tomorrow or not. Just when Zhang Hai said this, Feng Yunqin had already said directly. AI Xueqi, who was originally interested in this wedding, also closed her mouth at this time. She knew that Feng Yunqin would not harm her. Chapter 593. Just as Zhang Hai fell asleep, on the big bed in the new room where Zhang Hai and Qi Li were supposed to be lying together, Qi Li was staring at the ceiling with her eyes wide open, unable to fall asleep. She didn't know what was wrong with her. To be honest, her feelings for Zhang Hai were somewhat indescribable. In the beginning, Qi Li didn't like Zhang Hai. Needless to say, it was clear. However, after a year of settling down, other than using Zhang Hai as a shield, she felt more confused and slightly indebted to him. Otherwise, she wouldn't have wanted Zhang Hai to go to the imperial capital to take charge of some things to prove himself after hearing what others said. Unfortunately, at that time, she found out that Zhang Hai had already gone to the United States. Moreover, Zhang Hai's combination of punches made her a little confused. She didn't know when the slightly shy Zhang Hai in her memory had become a man. Then, Feng Yunqin and her snatched Zhang Hai. At that time, she hadn't fallen in love with Zhang Hai yet. She even felt a little disgusted. The reason why she wanted to snatch Jiang Hai back was just like a little girl's toy being snatched away by someone else. This toy was hers. She didn't have to play with it, but others couldn't touch it. Jiang Hai was her toy at that time. But then, the sky-high price of beef, the perfect seafood. When these mysterious things attracted her to the United States, that night, when Jiang Hai saved her, Jiang Hai's figure was officially imprinted in her heart. Although it was very cliché to say that a hero saving a damsel in distress, the more cliché and melodramatic it was, the more popular it was. Xueqi was a strong existence. When her strength was useless, she was saved by Jiang Hai. Then, her strength turned into love faster and faster. Later, she found a different side of Jiang Hai. Jiang Hai's beef allowed her Qi group to gain a foothold in the imperial capital in an instant and enter the food and beverage industry that she had always wanted to enter. Later, Jiang Hai came back decisively and killed the Yin family. He also had connections with the higher-ups in the country. He made the higher-ups in the country give in and no longer let Qili's 4 restaurants pay taxes. He also had connections with the royal family in the Middle East. Women, especially a strong woman like Qili, worshipped the strong. Jiang Hai became stronger little by little in a year in front of her. From a man who needed a chance to prove himself with her charity, he became a strong existence now. An existence so powerful that she had to look up to him had appeared in front of her just like that. And the original curiosity and possessiveness gradually turned into liking, admiration, and love. It was as simple as that. The night before yesterday, Qili was really stimulated and took the initiative to want to do something with Jiang Hai. But Jiang Hai's performance made her happy, but also made her hesitate. She was happy because Jiang Hai still had her in his heart. And Jiang Hai could see that she liked him very much and still had feelings for him. These were very important. And she hesitated because of what Jiang Hai said to her. If it was a year ago, she would be Jiang Hai's only one. But now, she gave up on him and he was no longer her only one. If she wanted Jiang Hai to come back, she might have to accept more than just Jiang Hai alone. This was also one of the most annoying things for her. What should I do? Looking at the ceiling, Qili thought with some hesitation. Accept others just like that? Qili was unwilling. Give up on Jiang Hai just like that? Her heart would hurt, and she would be even more unwilling. Or should she continue like this? But she was not young anymore. She also had to consider these things. This was a crossroads. Whether it was left, right, or forward, she was at a loss. What to do, this was a problem. Qili didn't know when she fell asleep. When the phone rang, she was still in a half-awake state. When she saw the number on the phone, she couldn't help but wake up a little. Hello? Jiang Hai. Looking at the name on the phone, Qili answered the phone and said to Jiang Hai on the other side of the phone. Hello, I'm downstairs. Pack up and leave. I'll pick you up at 5 o'clock. Hearing the voice of Jiang Hai on the other side of the phone, Qili forced herself to wake up. After saying, oh, she got out of bed. A strong woman like her had strong control over her body. If she wanted to wake herself up, she would wake up. If she wanted to make herself excited, she would be excited. After getting up, she took a few deep breaths. She went to the bathroom first. She washed her face, brushed her teeth, and then did her hair. Other women would need 2 hours to get out of the house, but she only needed less than 20 minutes to get out of the house. She had already prepared the clothes she was going to wear today. After putting on the clothes and high heels, she took a small bag and went downstairs. When she took the elevator downstairs, she just saw Jiang Hai yawning in the cold. The hood of his clothes had already been buckled on his head, and his hands were tucked into his sleeves. He was yawning and looking around. When she saw Qili coming downstairs, she couldn't help but brighten up. Today, Qili finally changed out of her office lady clothes. But the clothes she was wearing now were still full of aura. She wore a set of clothes inside. The top was a slightly tight beige shirt with a wide belt made of black cloth. The bottom was also beige trousers, which showed that her legs were particularly long, coupled with a pair of beige high heels, and a white, shawl-like woman's suit. With her makeup today, and her hair in a bun, wearing a necklace, earrings, and a pair of sunglasses, she looked so strong that Jiang Hai didn't dare to go up and talk to her. The domineering aura of the president shocked Jiang Hai for a moment, and he forgot that he was a little cold. Ah, you came down. Looking at Qili in front of him, Zhang Hai hesitated and felt that he should say something first. Is it just you? The two of them aren't going? Looking around and finding that only Zhang Hai was there, Qi asked strangely. Oh, it's just me, they aren't going. Hearing Qi words, Zhang Hai naturally knew who she was asking and immediately replied. Hey, they are quite good. If it's just the two of us, then we won't drive this car. Let's drive this. I just bought this a few days ago. Hearing that Feng Yunqin and Ai Xiaoxi weren't going, Qi couldn't help but smile, and then led Zhang Hai to the underground parking lot. As soon as he walked in, Zhang Hai saw a fiery red sports car parked there from far away. Wow, there are people who buy such a sports car in this community? After all, he has lived here for a year, Zhang Hai asked strangely. He now has some understanding of cars. This car is a Ferrari 488. Although the number is not very auspicious, it is also a good thing in the domestic sports car industry. The cheapest car, the fruit car, is worth 3.38 million, not to mention that this car doesn't look cheap. If it is expensive, it is nearly 4 million plus the purchase tax and so on. It is almost 4,300,000 or 400,000. This is mine, Yi Zichen said. Hearing Zhang Hai's words, Qi couldn't help but smile. She picked up the key, unlocked the car, and walked over. Hearing her words, Zhang Hai couldn't help but be a little confused. She bought a car, but why did she buy a car and put it here? I have to thank you for this car. I bought it with the tax I saved. The reason why this car is parked here is that I am going to give this car to Xueqi. Maybe she felt Zhang Hai's confusion. Qi sat down and said after getting in the car. Hearing Qi's words, Zhang Hai also shrugged. Anyway, it is her money. She can do whatever she wants. Besides, Zhang Hai also knows that in the eyes of Qi and Qi's mother, Zhang Xiaoa is like their sister and daughter. Not to mention that Zhang Hai doesn't care about the money. Even if he does, he can't stop Qi from giving it to her. But before sending it, let's be the first batch of passengers. Looking at Zhang Hai, who got into the car and fastened his seatbelt, Qi said with a smile. Then she stepped on the accelerator and drove out of the underground parking lot. After leaving the community, the sports car was like a ball of fire on the road when the sun just rose, moving forward quickly. At about 5:30, Zhang Hai and the others had already arrived at Huang Yunfei's new home. Well, in addition to the house he bought over the years, he bought another house for this wedding. Don't talk about how much the doctors and nurses earn. After all, this was what Zhang Hai saw with his own eyes. At this time, there were many cars parked downstairs of his new house. The owners of these cars were basically his parents' friends, relatives, colleagues, and so on. Although they made a lot of money, the cars they drove were not very good. Basically, cars that cost more than 200,000 yuan or 300,000 yuan were the most expensive. Most of them only cost about 200,000 yuan. Because a lot of the money they made was not exposed to the public. Although they didn't lack money to drive cars that cost millions, if they drove cars that cost millions, it was inevitable that they would be reported and investigated. At that time it would be troublesome. Therefore, when Zhang Hai's car arrived, many people looked at Zhang Hai's car and began to whisper to each other. When the car was parked, Zhang Hai and Qi got out of the car. They were particularly eye-catching. Qi was originally beautiful. Coupled with her aura and the red sports car that added a few hundred points, she instantly attracted a lot of attention. And there was only comparison when there was a comparison. Zhang Hai next to her was dressed in sportswear, which made her feel like a goddess. This made several people who were leaning against the car and chatting subconsciously tidy up their clothes and show their watches, hoping to attract the attention of the goddess. Unfortunately, at this time, Qi only had Zhang Hai in her eyes. After getting out of the car, she naturally held Zhang Hai's arm, which really shocked the people on the ground. Zhang Hai didn't care about these people. He took Qi upstairs. Upstairs, Fu Yuan and the others had already arrived in advance. They were there to pack up the candy box and prepare to go downstairs. When they saw Qi, they couldn't help but secretly click their tongues. Chapter 594. They already knew that Qi was pretty. After all, they had seen Qi at Zhang Hai's wedding. But except for that one time, they didn't seem to have seen Qi again. After all, Qi wasn't interested in Zhang Hai at first, so she didn't even look at Zhang Hai's friends. Now that they saw Qi come out, It was as if all the light was concentrated on Qi Li's body. Not only were the men unable to move their eyes away, the women were also the same. Hey, congratulations! Looking at everyone's appearance, Zhang Hai has to admit that he has gained a lot of face. He smiled at Huang Yunfei and gave him a red packet. There were 500 renminbi in the red packet. Don't look at the small amount of money. Zhang Hai could afford to pay more. He could afford to pay 1,000, 10,000, or even 100,000. However, there was no need for that. Firstly, Huang Yunfei's family was not short of money. Secondly, Bing City's custom was to return the same amount of money you gave this time. When Zhang Hai got married, Huang Yunfei gave him 500 renminbi. So, Zhang Hai also gave him 500 renminbi. Even if Zhang Hai gave him 10,000 renminbi this time, he still had to return the 10,000 renminbi the next time Zhang Hai got into trouble. There was no need for him to do so. Also, Zhang Hai wanted to see how much Fu Yuan and the rest had given him. After all, they were all buddies. Zhang Hai did not need to do this. This was just a small gift. Thank you, but I say, Sai, forget it. After taking the money from Zhang Hai, Huang Yunfei glanced at Qi Li and swallowed his words. He really wanted to say that he did not want Qi Li to go. It was because she was too eye-catching. His wife was just an ordinary person. Even if she was wearing a wedding dress today, she would probably be outclassed by Qi Li by a few hundred levels. When Qi Li stood there, not many people would look at them. But he could not say this. Was Qi Li an ordinary person? She was President Qi, and her family was worth tens of billions. He had come here to give him face, yet he still dared to grumble. Did he still have any shame? Besides, he also felt that Qi Li was very pleasing to the eye. It was just that all of a sudden, he was not as excited to get married as before. Damn, there is a red Ferrari downstairs. It's so cool. Is it your friend's? At this moment, Xianghua also ran up from downstairs. Just now, he and Su Wei went to press red paper for the community's manhole cover and just came back. As soon as he went upstairs, he began to talk. To be honest, there were few men who disliked cars. This car was indeed very beautiful. That's mine. Why? Is it in the way? Hearing Xianghua's words, Qi Li also saw Xianghua. She knew that this was Zhang Hai's smile, so she deliberately showed a smile and said politely to Xianghua. As a result, when Xianghua heard the voice, he looked up and was stunned. In fact, it was not only him who was stunned. Su Wei, who came up later, Huang Yunfei, and Fu Yuan, who were in the room, were also stunned. Cough, sister-in-law, try not to smile at the wedding later. Xianghua, who had a wife, was the first to react. He smiled awkwardly, and then said to Qi Li. When Qi Li heard his words, she stared at Zhang Hai and blinked, indicating that she did not quite understand. Looking at her, Zhang Hai also smiled. Sai, I really wonder if you're here to cause trouble. You'd better hurry up and give out the candies. By the way, take your beautiful wife away. Otherwise, my mother will feel uncomfortable again. By the way, since you're driving a Ferrari here, you can be my driver later. Looking at Qi Li's cute appearance, Huang Yunfei felt that his original excitement calmed down again. But suddenly he had an idea. Qi Li's car could be his driver. For this wedding, Huang Yunfei's wedding car was a Bentley. Originally, he was going to use this as the driver. But now that he had a sports car, it was best to use it as a driver. It would be much more beautiful in the video. Okay, no problem. Hearing Huang Yunfei's words, Qi Li also smiled and said to Huang Yunfei. Her smile stunned the people in the room again. Seeing this scene, Zhang Hai shrugged helplessly. He had to admit that Qi Li really gave him face. Of course, there were many people around Zhang Hai who could give him face like this, but Qi Li was the most dignified. Carrying a plastic bag of candy, Zhang Hai and Fu Yuan went downstairs again. After letting Qi Li go back to the car and wait, Zhang Hai and the others went to give out the candy. But after a few steps, when they were sure that Qi Li had gotten into the car and waited, Fu Yuan couldn't help but pat Zhang Hai's shoulder. I say, when did sister-in-law become so beautiful? Among these brothers, Zhang Hai's age was the second youngest, only older than Huang Yunfei, so it was not bad for them to call Qi Li sister-in-law. It has always been like this. After thinking about it, Zhang Hai said very clearly. Qili really hasn't changed much. Damn, I didn't know that sister-in-law was so beautiful. God, you have such a wife, and you still go out to flirt? Pointing at Zhang Hai, Xueqi was also a little stunned. He couldn't imagine that Zhang Hai was so fierce. Sweat, it's not like you don't know the things between us. You make it sound like I'm wrong. Hearing their words, Zhang Hai wiped his sweat. These guys forget their friends when they see a woman. This is my wife. If this is a beauty that they don't know, they will go crazy. Looking at their eyes that were about to burst into flames, Zhang Hai looked at them contemptuously and said, "With such a beautiful wife, what does it matter if it's right or wrong? Unless she goes out to find a man, otherwise, as long as she doesn't leave me, I can put up a board to worship her at home." Hearing Zhang Hai's words, Xianghua said with some disappointment, "His wife is so beautiful. Does it matter who is right and who is wrong? You say this as if Feng Yunqin and Ai Xiaoxi are not beautiful." Hearing their words, Zhang Hai curled his mouth and said with disdain. When they heard what Zhang Hai said, they were stunned again. Indeed, when they saw Ai Xiaoxi the day before yesterday, they were stunned. When they saw Feng Yunqin yesterday, they were also stunned. These three are rare beauties, but now they are all taken by Zhang Hai, this pig. Ai, it's intolerable. There are some things that can't be envied. Let's go. Looking at the brothers around him, Fu Yuan sighed helplessly and continued to give out candies and cigarettes. Not long after all the candies and cigarettes were given out, it was almost 8 o'clock. Anyway, it was an auspicious time. Zhang Hai didn't look at the specific time. The team lined up and started to set off. The first car was naturally Qili's Ferrari 488. Zhang Hai sat in the front passenger seat. They followed the video car all the way to the front. After about half an hour, they arrived at the woman's home. This time, Zhang Hai didn't bring Qili up, because if something really happened, it would be troublesome. So they just went up, knocked on the door, gave out red packets, looked for shoes and so on. After everything was done, they put on the new shoes for the bride, went downstairs, took some photos, and recorded some videos. After that, they got into the wedding car and went to the place of the ceremony. When they arrived at the scene, most of the things were already done. The only thing left was the ceremony. Zhang Hai and the others didn't need to do anything. Huang Yunfei's two cousins had already prepared the fake wine. At the wedding, the bride and groom had to toast each other, and this wine was not real wine 90% of the time. Of course, it didn't rule out that some people had a high alcohol tolerance, so when they drank, they used real wine. Huang Yunfei had a good alcohol tolerance, but he wasn't going to use real wine. The wine was a bottle of white wine. After the white wine was poured out, the bottle would be stained with the smell of white wine. Then, mineral water was poured in. There was a trace of alcohol smell, but it didn't have any alcohol content. Zhang Hai also had an important task, which was to sit next to Qili. If someone saw that Qili was too beautiful and had bad intentions, it would be troublesome. So it was better to let her husband, Zhang Hai, sit there and watch. Moreover, Qili didn't know anyone here, so it was still very awkward to sit there. Sure enough, with Zhang Hai sitting here, although there were a lot of men looking over, none of them dared to come over. The two also chatted casually. The atmosphere was good, but Zhang Hai could see that Qili was a little absent-minded. What's wrong? Looking at Qili, Zhang Hai asked strangely. This was not like the Qili he knew. It's nothing. Zhang Hai, drink with me later. Hearing Zhang Hai's words, Qili shook her head, then looked up at Zhang Hai and said with a serious face. She said that she wanted to drink, so Zhang Hai naturally wouldn't disagree. If she wanted to drink, then drink. With the end of the wedding ceremony, the chopsticks were officially handed out. Zhang Hai just picked up the chopsticks and prepared to eat something. After all, he really didn't eat anything since the morning. But before the chopsticks could pick up anything, Qili had already handed over a glass of wine that had been filled to the brim. Looking at Qili's serious eyes, Zhang Hai took the wine. Come on, drink. Seeing Zhang Hai take the wine, Qili didn't say anything. She directly raised her head and drank the glass of wine. Seeing her like this, Zhang Hai was shocked. It should be known that it was white wine, not water. Although the wine used by Huang Yunfei for the banquet was not very good wine, it was still 38%. This glass was 2.5 ounces. Zhang Hai felt uncomfortable just looking at it, but Qili drank the wine directly and then placed the glass in front of Zhang Hai. Okay. Looking at her, Zhang Hai sighed helplessly and then drank his glass. To be honest, Zhang Hai was afraid of drinking now. After all, he had 4 times the physical fitness of the human limit. In addition, he used to drink wine every day in the manor. This wine was nothing to him, but for Qili, it was. Chapter 595. After drinking a glass of wine, Qili's face suddenly turned pale instead of red. After all, Qili's starting point was quite high. When she started working, she was already the general manager and chairman. The deals she went to discuss were basically all from the imperial capital, or even from the upper echelons. She couldn't touch those nouveau riche and careless fellows. Even if she did, the other party wouldn't dare to use a chicken feather as an arrow. Therefore, when she first started to take power, basically, it was fine as long as she was present. As long as she was present, no one would deliberately force her to drink. It was normal for a glass of red wine to accompany her until the end of the meeting, so her alcohol tolerance was really not very good. Most importantly, this was not red wine, but white wine. After drinking this glass, not to mention her, even a man may not be able to withstand it. After all, she drank in such a hurry. Come on, let's drink again. Seeing that Zhang Hai also drank up the wine, Qili couldn't help but pour another glass into her glass. Then she wanted to pour another glass for Zhang Hai. Looking at her, Zhang Hai frowned and pulled up the bottle. Don't stop me. I really want to drink today. Looking at Zhang Hai, Qili said with a serious face. Looking at her eyes, Zhang Hai's hand gradually loosened, then he sighed and put the food he picked with his chopsticks on Qili's plate. If you want to drink, eat first. Looking at Qili, Zhang Hai said seriously. Hearing Zhang Hai's words, Qili also smiled. She didn't reject Zhang Hai's kindness. She lowered her head and ate up the food. As soon as she finished eating, Zhang Hai put another plate on her plate. So in this way, Zhang Hai put more food on her plate and she ate there. Unknowingly, she also ate some food. After eating about 3 plates, she put down her chopsticks, picked up the wine glass directly, and looked at Zhang Hai. Zhang Hai also knew that she couldn't eat much. 3 plates of food was almost enough, and the food here didn't taste good. Now seeing that she stopped eating and looked up at Zhang Hai also sighed. After eating the food on her plate, he also picked up the wine glass. If she wanted to drink, let her drink. Anyway, Zhang Hai was here. Nothing would happen. When the 2's wine glasses touched, Qili drank up the glass in an instant. Perhaps because there was some food in her stomach, Qili's face was still a little pale, but it was already a little red. Come, let's drink again. Seeing that Zhang Hai also drank up the wine, Qili picked up another bottle and filled it for Zhang Hai and herself. Then, without waiting for Zhang Hai to say anything, she directly raised her head and drank up the wine. Seeing this scene, Zhang Hai was speechless. She was going to make herself more today. Drinking 3 glasses directly was 7.5, which was enough to settle her. Zhang Hai was not afraid that she would drink too much, but it would be troublesome if she drank and hurt herself. Just as Zhang Hai hesitated to drink up the 3rd glass, Qili had already poured the 4th glass. Hey, don't drink in such a hurry. The bride and groom are here to propose a toast. Seeing that she was about to drink again, Zhang Hai could not help but put his hand on the glass and said to Qili. Hearing Zhang Hai's words, Qili also looked at the 2 newlyweds who were walking over. We didn't propose a toast at that time. Looking at the 2 people walking over, Qili's tongue was a little stiff. Looking at the 2 people in front of her, Qili whispered. Hearing her words, Zhang Hai also sighed. Indeed, they didn't propose a toast. At that time you were in a bad mood. After thinking for a while, Zhang Hai found an excuse for her. Yeah, I was in a bad mood at that time. I was thinking about my dad, but now I'm still in a bad mood because I'm thinking about another man, a bastard named Zhang Hai. Hearing Zhang Hai's words, Qili was stunned for a moment, then smiled and said to Zhang Hai. Hearing her words, Zhang Hai could not help but be speechless. How was he supposed to answer this? The newlyweds are here. Come, let me propose a toast to you. I wish you a happy life and a happy marriage. At this moment, Huang Yunfei and his wife also walked over, holding 2 glasses of water and looking at everyone with a smile. At this moment, Qi took the initiative to walk over and said to the newlyweds. Looking at Qi's appearance, Huang Yunfei could not help but be a little confused. What's going on? And before he could say anything, she directly drank a glass of wine. Seeing this scene, the people who were eating at the table were also a little confused, and Huang Yunfei was also a little embarrassed. What is this little episode? Cough. It's my first time drinking. Maybe I drank too much. Let's drink. By the way, you are going to take photos in a while. I'll lend you my car first. I'll park it in your garage tonight. I'll come to you tomorrow. Looking at Qi's current situation, Zhang Hai couldn't help but feel a little depressed. He walked a few steps to Qi's side and hugged her in his arms, then apologized to Huang Yunfei. After drinking his wine, he took the car key out of Qi's bag. Now neither of them can drive. After all, they both drank. Even if Zhang Hai is fine, they can't drive. You know, drunk driving in Huaxia is punishable by jail. Unlike in the United States, drinking and driving is at most community service. Zhang Hai doesn't want to experience the taste of the Northeast prison, so he directly threw the car key to Huang Yunfei. Hearing Zhang Hai's words, Huang Yunfei's eyes lit up. If he can use Zhang Hai's car for the video later, it will be great. That's fine, you take care of sister-in-law first. If you feel uncomfortable, you can send sister-in-law back first. We will play cards in the afternoon. If you have time, come over and thank you in the evening. I will call you then. Hearing Zhang Hai's words, Huang Yunfei also said with a smile. Hearing his words, Zhang Hai also waved his hand, and then nodded apologetically to the people around him. He then walked out of the restaurant with Qi, who was already a little unstable and drunk. However, although Qi was a little drunk, after all, she drank half a liter. However, her consciousness was still very clear. She knew that the person who was caressing her was Zhang Hai, her husband. Therefore, her body took the initiative to lean against Zhang Hai's side, allowing Zhang Hai to caress her better. In this way, the 2 people took advantage of the chaos to leave first. After arriving downstairs, Zhang Hai took a taxi. The 2 sat in the back row, so that it was convenient for Zhang Hai to take care of her. Where are you 2 going? Seeing Zhang Hai and Qi get in the car, the taxi driver here couldn't help but look at Qi twice. Such a beautiful passenger, he didn't meet many times. And what's the situation now? Drunk too much? Is Zhang Hai a corpse picker? Go to XX Road XX. After getting in the car, Zhang Hai subconsciously reported the location of his home, but just after he finished speaking, Qi had already waved her hand and sat up, patting the driver's seat in front of her. No, go to XX Road XX Community. I don't want to go to your home. That is your home, not my home. I want to go to our home, our new house. Looking at Zhang Hai, Qi said with a serious face. Hearing her words, Zhang Hai also sighed. Then go to XX Road XX Community. Looking at the appearance of Zhang Hai and Qi, this made the taxi driver a little confused. 2 people's new house? If it's not that this woman is too unscrupulous, then these 2 may really be a couple or boyfriend and girlfriend. Although he was cursing in his heart, a flower inserted in cow dung, he still drove the car and drove to Zhang Hai's home. Sitting in the back of the taxi, Zhang Hai looked at Qi, who was already a little drunk, and Zhang Hai really didn't know what to say. The taxi was still quite fast. After arriving at the place, Zhang Hai paid the money and walked into the community with Qi. At first, the security guards of the community looked at Zhang Hai's movements and were shocked, but after seeing Zhang Hai and Qi, they were quiet because Zhang Hai and Qi were residents of this community, especially Zhang Hai. After all, a year ago, he lived here for a year, and Qi often came back recently, but this was the first time that the 2 appeared at the same time. However, since it was determined that they were the owners of the house, and they were a couple, these security guards couldn't interfere. After carrying Qi back to their former home, Zhang Hai couldn't help but feel emotional after opening the door. He lived here to wait for Qi, but now Qi lived here. Was she waiting for him? Zhang Hai really didn't know. After changing his shoes, the slippers were still in the original position. Zhang Hai carried Qi into the master bedroom, put her on the bed, and helped her take off her shoes and coat. As for the clothes inside, Jiang Hai didn't touch them. Looking at the drunk Qi Li, Jiang Hai squatted next to her and looked at her. Maybe she felt Jiang Hai's gaze. Although she had a headache, Qi Li still opened her eyes, and the two looked at each other. You can't drink. Why do you drink so much? Do you feel uncomfortable? If you feel uncomfortable, just vomit. I'll get you a basin. Looking at Qi Li, who was looking at him, Jiang Hai sighed and wanted to stand up and go to the bathroom to get a basin. But before he stood up completely, his hand was pulled by Qi Li. Although I drank a lot of wine and my body is weak, my consciousness is still there. I am not drunk. Looking at Jiang Hai, Qi Li said with a serious face. Hearing Qi Li's words, Jiang Hai looked at her clear eyes. Sure enough, she has strong control over her body, especially in the spiritual aspect. Now she can't stand up, but her consciousness is still clear. Then what do you want to do? You tell me, I'll help you. Looking at Qi Li, who was looking at him, Jiang Hai bent down and asked her. I want you to *CK me. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Qi Li said seriously. What? But when he heard what she said, Jiang Hai was a bit confused. This guy shouldn't be drunk, right? Don't you understand? I want you to *CK me. I'm not sure if I can accept you and other people at the same time, but I can't just let you go like this. I want to compete with AI Xueqi and the others. First of all, I have to be able to do what they can do. I'm not trying to prove how great I am, I just want to prove that I can get back what I lost. Looking at Jiang Hai, Qi Li didn't know where the strength came from, but she directly pulled Jiang Hai to the bed. Chapter 596. Hey Jiang Hai, where are you? Come over for dinner. Picking up the phone, Jiang Hai listened to Huang Yunfei's voice on the other side. He couldn't help but rub his head with a headache, and then looked at Qi Li, who was blinking her big eyes in front of him, looking at him. But at this time, Jiang Hai and Qi Li were no longer in a pure relationship. At this time, the two of them were naked. There were some bright red bloodstains on the sheets. There was no need to say what happened just now. I can't go, I still have something to do here. Qi Li is very drunk and can't leave. Let's talk about it when we have time. Hearing Huang Yunfei's voice on the phone, Jiang Hai sighed and said to the other side of the phone. Hearing that Jiang Hai couldn't leave, Huang Yunfei didn't say anything. After all, they still have a long time to meet. Huang Yunfei and the others are going to the United States with Jiang Hai to play, so they don't care about this meal. After everything was done, Jiang Hai also hung up the phone. As soon as the phone was hung up, Qi Li instantly came up, her hands around Jiang Hai's neck. Her mouth was about to touch Jiang Hai's mouth, and her body was completely attached to Jiang Hai's body. Don't make trouble. Your mouth reeks of alcohol. Jiang Hai put the phone aside and then said to Qi Li. Humph, you want me to brush my teeth before you kiss me? Didn't you kiss me happily just now? Then why don't you kiss me here? Hearing what Jiang Hai said, Qi Li curled her lips, and then deliberately moved up a bit, revealing her brutality, and smiled at Jiang Hai. Haven't you had enough just now? You're still messing around. Looking at Qi Li, Jiang Hai also put his hand on Brutal and gently pinched it, making Qi Li cry out. Then, she glared at Jiang Hai and slid her hand down his neck. Feeling Qi Li's movement, Jiang Hai patted her butt and said to her. Yes, it's not enough. It's not enough for a lifetime. I didn't know that it was such a comfortable thing before. No wonder Feng Yunqin and AI Xueqi, those two little sluts, took the initiative to touch you as soon as they saw you. I heard that it's very painful when women do it, but other than the initial pain, I don't feel anything now. Listening to Jiang Hai's words, Qi Li combed her hair behind her head, leaned on Jiang Hai's chest, and said softly while using her hand. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai couldn't help but mutter in his heart. If it weren't for his spiritual energy, would she not feel pain? It should be known that Qi Li had been suppressing her feelings for a long time just now. She was very crazy. Under such a crazy situation, every movement she made would be very painful. How could it be like now, where nothing happened? Let's do it again. Looking at Jiang Hai, Qi Li leaned on Jiang Hai's ear and whispered. Then, without waiting for Jiang Hai's answer, she unconsciously increased the strength of her hands. Soon, Jiang Hai was ready, and the battle began again. At the end of the battle, the sky had completely darkened. As for Qili, she looked like she was dehydrated. She was sweating all over as she lay on the bed. Her hair was stuck to her face and everywhere. Even Jiang Hai couldn't help but gasp for breath. At this time, Jiang Hai's WeChat also rang. He picked it up and saw that it was a message from AI Xueqi, asking if he would come back for dinner. Looking at the time, it was already 7 o'clock in the evening. Those two girls couldn't have been waiting for him until now, right? Let's go, I'll take you to take a shower, and then we'll go out for dinner. Since Qili had made up her mind to have such a relationship with him, Jiang Hai's originally tangled problem also relaxed a little. Patting Qili's leg, Jiang Hai said to her, "And your two little lovers, forget it, I won't go, let me have a good rest, I'm not hungry." Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Qili looked at him with contempt, then raised her head and said helplessly. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai couldn't help but be angry. Without saying a word, he directly carried her out of the room and went to the bathroom next door. He turned on the water and the two played while washing. Of course, maybe because they had been here many times just now, neither Jiang Hai nor Qili said anything this time. After playing for a while, the two wiped themselves clean and walked out. This time, the smell of alcohol on the two disappeared. When Qili went to put on makeup, pack things, and put on clothes, Jiang Hai also went to the room and changed the bedsheets. At the same time, he opened the window to change the air. Now the air in the room, as long as an adult came in, he would know what had just happened here. Originally, when he was impulsive, this smell was very stimulating, but now in the case of Sage Mode, it was a bit unpleasant. He connected the automatic washing machine and threw in Qili's clothes and bed sheets. Jiang Hai didn't care what material Qili's clothes were made of and directly began to stir. After all this was done, Qili also changed into a new set of clothes. Compared with the valiant look she wore during the day, this set of clothes was more like a cute little bird. Wearing it, she looked very cute. After watching Qili change her clothes, Jiang Hai and Qili also walked out of the door. But as soon as they walked out, Qili instantly took Jiang Hai's arm and leaned on Jiang Hai's side. Now she was really attached to Jiang Hai. This was also the most passionate state of love. The two went downstairs. After an afternoon of exercise, Qili might not be able to do it, but Jiang Hai had already sweated out the alcohol in his body. Now there was no alcohol in his body. So he could drive. Even if he was stopped, it wouldn't be detected. After getting in the Infinity, Jiang Hai took Qili and drove in the direction of his home. When they were about to arrive, he called AI Xiaoxi and Feng Yunchen. After the two went downstairs, they got in the car. But as soon as they entered the car, they felt that the atmosphere was a bit wrong. In the past, Jiang Hai and AI Xiaoxi would communicate with each other in the car, but the communication was mainly through words. But this time, after they got into the car, they found that Qili was touching Jiang Hai. Seeing this scene, the two women couldn't help but be stunned. What the hell is this? What are we going to eat? Seeing someone come in, Qili was not very happy, but she still turned her head and asked AI Xiaoxi and Feng Yunchen behind her. Hearing her words, the two women felt even more strange. In the past, Qili was just like a strong woman. Her words and actions were swift and decisive. She was not like the current Qili. Not only was her body soft, but her voice was also a little delicate. This was not the Qili they knew. Ugh, Director Qi, are you sick? Looking at Qili, Feng Yunchen asked strangely. What illness? Hurry up, what are we going to eat? Hearing Feng Yunchen's words, Qili couldn't help but roll her eyes at her, and then continued to ask. Hearing that Qili seemed to be a little better, Feng Yunchen was temporarily relieved. Whatever you want to eat, Jiang Hai can order it. Glancing at Jiang Hai, Feng Yunchen said. To be honest, she didn't know what to eat. Then let's go eat casserole. After thinking for a while, Jiang Hai suggested to the three women beside him. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, the three women first thought for a while, and then nodded. Speaking of which, they haven't eaten this for a while. The so-called casserole, full name is casserole pancake, may be a specialty of the north. Because Jiang Hai didn't go to many places in China, he didn't know much about it, but it is very likely to be in the northeast. The way to eat it is to put soup in a casserole, just like a normal soup pot. Of course, the soup pot in Bing City also needs to add seasonings, which is different from the soups in the south. In the south, People will drink the original taste of the soup. At most, they will add some salt, because they feel that too much seasonings will destroy the original taste of the ingredients. But in the north, they will add a lot of seasonings to make the soup taste what they like. This is the difference between the north and the south. Bing City's casserole also has seasonings. There are all kinds of casseroles: mutton vermicelli, spinach, beef, tofu balls, braised meatballs, steamed meatballs, etc. This soup pot is complete with soup and vegetables. The staple food is rice or pancakes, but basically, pancakes are the main food here. The pancakes are crispy, especially when they are just made. The outside is very crispy, but the inside is very soft. It's really delicious when you bite into it. If you feel that the taste is bland, you can also soak the pancakes in the soup so that the taste of the soup is immersed in the pancakes. When you eat the pancakes will soften, and there is also the taste of the soup. It's delicious. Also, there is a special pot of meat, which is actually braised pork, but it is stewed until it's soft. The taste is quite good. When Jiang Hai and the rest were young, they had eaten this dish. Ai Xiaoxi is not sure, but Qili and Feng Yunchen had eaten it before. But when they grew up, they had fewer chances to eat this dish. After all, things like casseroles were very expensive for a student when they were in school. It was far less suitable to eat boxed lunches and noodles. After working, they earned more money, so they didn't care about this small amount of money. They wouldn't come over to eat casseroles. That's why unless people like to eat casserole dishes, not many people will come to eat casserole dishes. Jiang Hai only remembered casserole dishes today. Since he remembered, the four of them used their phones to find a restaurant and went to eat casserole dishes. After eating casserole pancakes, the four of them breathed a sigh of relief because they are finally full. However, after the meal, the next problem was a little depressing. That was the problem of where to live. Originally, there was nothing much to say. Jiang Hai was definitely going to go back with Feng Yunchen and Ai Xiaoxi. But now the problem was that he and Qili had just had some things happen in the afternoon. If he just left like this, wouldn't it be a bit bad? But to let Qili live in his house, even if Jiang Hai used his toes to think, he knew that this was simply impossible. Chapter 597. Just as Jiang Hai thought, Qili did not intend to be open at night. On the first day with Jiang Hai, she stayed with his mistress and slept together. The plot in YY novels was not so easy to appear in the real world. Although in Jiang Hai's opinion, his current life was enough. In the end, after Jiang Hai sent Feng Yunchen and Ai Xiaoxi home, he still stayed at Qili's place at night. Of course, after eating and regaining her strength, Qili was still quite interested in the things she had not done in her 27 years. Jiang Hai was really afraid that she would get addicted. However, Jiang Hai did not refuse. He was busy all night and only slept after midnight. The next day at noon, Qili went back to her mother's place. Jiang Hai went back home, but before he could rest at home, the battle started again. One must know that Feng Yunchen returned to Bing City specifically for Jiang Hai. Since Jiang Hai came back, she had not returned home. In the end, Jiang Hai was always at Qili's place. She was unhappy, so when she came back, naturally, there was another big battle. After dinner, Jiang Hai's legs were a little weak. He went to Huang Yunfei's place to retrieve the Ferrari 488 that was lent to him for the photo shoot yesterday. Jiang Hai returned to Qili's neighborhood. After returning, he naturally could not rest. Other national holidays were time to go out and play or rest at home, but Jiang Hai's national holidays were very busy. During the day, he had to appease Feng Yunchen and Ai Xiaoxi. At night, he had to stay with Qili, and the three women seemed to be in a competition. They would not give up until they had squeezed Jiang Hai dry. Jiang Hai felt that if he was an ordinary person, he would be finished soon. It might not be long before he was finished. Fortunately, he was not an ordinary person. Sometimes, during the day or the first half of the night, he could use this as an excuse to have dinner and drink with his buddies. Otherwise, his body would be at a disadvantage. After all, this was Ice City and he could not absorb any spiritual energy here. Ever since Jiang Hai joined the United States, he had only gained one scale, and it was grown in Ai Xiaoxi's hometown in Lu Province. Other than that, nothing else had grown. He had to admit that the environmental problems in the country, especially in the cities, were really troublesome. Although Bingqing's environment was not particularly good, it was not particularly bad either. At least when there was no central heating, the weather outside was still good. At least one could still see the blue sky and white clouds. However, the hearse was still motionless. Unknowingly, the National Day holiday was over. In the blink of an eye, it was October 7th. Tomorrow was the start of work. Zhang Hai and the rest were also ready to leave. However, when they came over, they came separately. When they left, many of them left at once. Zhang Hai, Qi Li, Feng Yunchen, Ai Xiaoxi, Huang Yunfei and his wife, Xueqi, and Fu Yuan, who were going to play with Zhang Hai. There were 8 people in total. Xueqi specially went to find a man who drove a large van and drove them to the airport. With Zhang Hai's help, Huang Yunfei and the rest bought tickets from Ice City to Beijing and from Beijing to the United States. Although they were economy class tickets, they were all business class tickets. Although these tickets were bought by themselves, how much did Zhang Hai spend in the past year? There was no way to forget about it. Therefore, the points from American Express were also quite high. They could spend some points to upgrade their cabin. Zhang Hai didn't need these points, so it would be better to just leave them there and do some small things. The group took the plane to Beijing. After resting for a night in Beijing, Zhang Hai, Huang Yunfei, and the rest boarded the plane from Beijing to New York. Qi Li, Ai Xiaoxi, and Feng Yunchen did not follow Zhang Hai this time. Qi Li still had to take care of her family's business. Although Ai Xiaoxi's heart had already changed, she still needed to prepare. Feng Yunchen had to follow Ai Xiaoxi, so in the end, only the 3 of them stayed. After Zhang Hai and the 3 girls were intimate for a while, they boarded the plane and prepared to return to Winthrop. On the plane back, Zhang Hai specially bought a business class ticket. The price of a business class ticket was nearly 4 times the price of a first class ticket. The service was indeed 4 times worse. The chair could not be opened completely like a bed, and there were not so many seats for him. Although it was much wider than the economy class, he was not used to sitting in the first class. Fortunately, the 4 of them could still have a good chat. As for Huang Yunfei's wife, LV Zhao, there was not much to talk about. Zhang Hai and the rest had seen this girl before. She didn't like to talk or play much. She was very quiet and didn't have any opinions. Otherwise, she wouldn't have married Huang Yunfei, who was a playboy. Watching his wife fall asleep, Huang Yunfei also whispered to Zhang Hai on the plane. "I say, the foreign woman over there, is she fun?" He carefully touched Zhang Hai and whispered to Zhang Hai. "Not bad, but it mainly depends on your own level." Glancing at Huang Yunfei, Zhang Hai thought for a moment and said to him, "Although Zhang Hai has not been to Winthrop and Boston to find these professional women to discuss life and persuade them to do good. But when she was in New York, the price was not high, but the effect was also quite good, and there was an unexpected gain that night. Haven't you heard of my level? I am known as the Little Prince of the Golden Gun." Hearing Zhang Hai's words, Huang Yunfei said confidently, "He really hasn't tried anything like a foreign woman and winning glory for the country. Hee hee. Number 3 screw is number 3 screw. It has nothing to do with what material it is made of. When it is put on number 8 nut, it will shake a lot." Hearing his words, Zhang Hai glanced at him disdainfully and said with a smile, "Ah." Hearing Zhang Hai's words, Huang Yunfei was a little overwhelmed this time. "Can't we have fun? Really?" As for Xueqi and Fu Yuan, they listened to Zhang Hai's words and kept laughing there. They had considered the problem mentioned by Zhang Hai before, but they heard that it was Ting Lu, so they had to give it a try. "After getting off the plane, we will go directly back to my manor by car. Of course, we will take a detour on the way. If you want to take a photo of the goddess of nature or something, you can take it then. When you get to my manor, you can rest first. On the second day, I will take you out to sea. Let me tell you, I am a rich man now. I bought a yacht after Fu Yuan left." Seeing that everyone had laughed enough, Zhang Hai also talked to them about the arrangements for these days. When it came to this, Fu Yuan couldn't help but give him a middle finger. "This guy is too shameless." This time, Xueqi and the others applied for the same 10-day visa as the last time Fu Yuan came. Naturally, they couldn't do anything on the first day. On the second day, Zhang Hai took them out to sea to fish. At noon, they could go diving on the coral reef. At night, They went back to hold a party. On the third day, they went to Winthrop. Of course, they couldn't play in detail. Then they went to the gun shop in the afternoon. As for riding horses, they could ride in Jiang Hai's manor. This was the itinerary of the fourth day. On the fourth day, they took a break in the afternoon. On the fifth day, Jiang Hai took them into the mountains to burn guns and hunt. On the sixth day, they went to Boston. On the seventh day, they could do whatever they wanted. On the eighth day, they took a day off. On the ninth day, they went shopping. It was impossible for them to come to the United States without bringing anything back. On the 10th day, they returned to New York and flew back to Huaxia. But this time, Jiang Hai didn't go back with them. For this arrangement, everyone was very much in agreement. While talking and chatting, the few of them unknowingly became sleepy. Jiang Hai also put down his chair and slept. Anyway, it was just one night, so it was fine to deal with it. When they woke up, their backs would definitely be sore. However, the plane had already arrived in New York at this time. After getting off the plane, Jiang Hai's shield had been waiting in the parking lot of the airport for a long time. Jiang Hai didn't expect that he would stay so long this time. However, it didn't matter if he stayed for a long time. Looking at Jiang Hai's new car, Fu Yuan, Huang Yunfei, and Xueqi all picked up their mobile phones and began to take pictures. To be honest, this car looked really scary and they were also very tempted. Even Huang Yunfei was thinking that if Jiang Hai's car was in China, he would use this car as a wedding car. It would really beat the hundreds of streets like Bentley. If Jiang Hai knew his idea, he would probably refuse. It was not because he was reluctant. After all, it was just a wedding car. He had nothing to be reluctant about, but it was still because of that sentence. What car, what job? Although people in Huaxia didn't pay much attention to these things, after all, the wedding was a Western style. It was not good to make a mess. Jiang Hai's shield had no problem sitting these 5 people. After everyone got in the car, Jiang Hai also started the engine. A good car was indeed a good car. It had been basking in the dust here for half a month, but it was still very strong. Jiang Hai stepped on the accelerator and drove out of the airport. He went to a nearby car wash. After the car was automatically washed, they set off again. After all, in the past half a month, although the car was fine, there was a thick layer of dust on it. After all, this was an airport, so the dust was very heavy. After the car was cleaned, Jiang Hai deliberately made a half circle around New York. For example, the more famous Statue of Liberty, Fifth Avenue, Times Square, and so on. He let everyone take a look at them from afar. After making a circle in New York, they got on the National Highway and went straight to Boston. Originally, it took more than 2 hours to go from Boston to New York. From Boston to Jiang Hai's manor, it was about half an hour. However, after Jiang Hai made a circle, the plane arrived at 3:30 in the afternoon. It was almost 8 o'clock when they went home. After walking for nearly 5 hours, when the car came to a stop, everyone got out of the car and stretched with all their might. Although they saw a lot of scenery along the way, to be honest, it was really too tiring. Jiang Hai, you're back. You're so slow. At this moment, in front of Jiang Hai's villa, a crisp voice sounded. Then Huang Yunfei and others looked over and saw a beautiful woman standing in front of the villa at this time. They were all stunned. Chapter 598. What's going on? Looking at the row of beautiful women in front of them, everyone here was a little confused. The only one who was mentally prepared was Fu Yuan, because when Fu Yuan came last time, he had already seen Aphrodite and Jiang Hai's 2 daughters, Daliana and Marian. But he had not seen Bernice and Little Ye. He had to admit that Bernice and Little Ye, these 2 Easterners, were more in line with their aesthetic views. Bernice's strong appearance was somewhat similar to Xueqi, and Little Ye's pure white elf-like appearance was even more pitiful. Let me introduce you. First, this is Fu Yuan. In addition to you, Daliana and the others have seen him. This is Xueqi, this is Huang Yunfei, this is Huang Yunfei's wife, LV Zhao. Then I'll introduce you to this side. This is Daliana, this is Marian, this is my daughter, this is Bernice, this is Little Ye, they are also my guests, this is Aphrodite Arnold, this is Dana Taylor, this is Hilda Leonard, this is Peggy Hall, this is Sheila Rodney, this is Ohilia Clive, this is Bridget Nelson, this is Janice Joy, they are Maya. Looking at everyone's puzzled eyes, Zhang Hai also introduced them. But when it came to Aphrodite and the others, Zhang Hai couldn't help but be a little speechless. Looking at Aphrodite and the others, Zhang Hai didn't know what to say. Because how should he introduce them? Say that they are his women? It's a little forced, but say that they are his workers? Isn't that a bit too heartless? Then what are they? Friends. Well, maybe this is a good way to put it. We are Zhang Hai's servants. Please come in, the guest rooms and dinner are ready. But before Zhang Hai could say anything, Aphrodite smiled and said. Hearing Aphrodite's words, Zhang Hai couldn't help but stare blankly. He looked at Aphrodite, but Aphrodite just winked at him. It was obvious that she had been prepared for this address for a long time. Don't listen to their nonsense. These are my friends. All right, let's go in. However, Zhang Hai didn't go along with her words. Although this was to give him face, Zhang Hai's heart was still somewhat apologetic. He waved his hand and said something to Xueqi and the others, then led everyone into his villa. However, after walking in, except for Fu Yuan, Xueqi and Huang Yunfei felt a sense of confusion. While they were going in, Zhang Hai also tugged at Aphrodite. Why didn't he see Azalina? She hasn't been feeling well these past few days, so she's resting in her room. Hearing Zhang Hai's words, Aphrodite whispered, Not feeling well? Hearing Aphrodite's explanation, Zhang Hai was a little puzzled, but Aphrodite smiled and didn't explain more. Because they had never eaten with so many beautiful women around them, and the place where they ate was actually a standalone villa. To be honest, it was almost like a dream. At this time, after they entered the house, they unconsciously tightened their bodies and looked at everything around them. Seeing their reaction, Zhang Hai also chuckled. It was quite good to show them his power. Okay, let's serve the dishes. When everyone was seated, Bernice also shouted towards the kitchen. Then Aphrodite and the others went to the kitchen and began to serve the dishes that had been prepared long ago. Although these dishes were not all made by Little Ya, they were almost all guided by Little Ya. Her craftsmanship was not too bad. As soon as the first dish was served, Huang Yunfei's eyes widened. Because the first dish was a huge Boston lobster. Although they saw Fu Yuan showing off in their circle of friends before, it was the first time they saw it in real life. Looking at that huge lobster, they couldn't help but swallow their saliva. This thing, how heavy is it? It's more than 20 jin. Pointing to the lobster in front of him, Huang Yunfei said with a trembling voice. He is a rich man, and he has basically eaten everything. After all, those equipment dealers, pharmaceutical representatives, and the like, in order to let them use their things naturally, they have to treat them, eat, take a bath, whatever the dragon is, and the quality is quite good. So he has eaten lobster before, but such a big lobster, let alone eat it, he has never even seen it before. This one is 18. 5 jin in total. Hearing Huang Yunfei's words, most of the people at the dinner table were a little confused. After all, he spoke Mandarin, but Bernice, Little Ya, Delina, and Marion could still understand him. So Bernice said, answering his doubts. Hearing Bernice's words, Huang Yunfei couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. 18. 5 jin, that is to say, this lobster is 37 jin? 37 jin. It's not 3. 5 jin. Thinking of this, he immediately took out his mobile phone and began to take pictures. Of course, except for him, the others will not be polite. Such a big lobster, if they don't take pictures of it, they won't be able to sleep at night. Zhang Hai, you are too polite. Such a big lobster, my God. After the shooting, Xueqi awkwardly said. They came here to play, but they didn't come here to take advantage of Zhang Hai. Although they said that Zhang Hai would take care of the food and drink, but Zhang Hai gave them such a big gift, which made them somewhat unable to sit still. How much would this thing cost? It's okay. Although the size of this lobster is not small, I still have a lot of it. At least, I can't finish it. Looking at Xueqi and the others who were a little embarrassed, Zhang Hai said with a smile. He does have a lot of these things. Hearing Zhang Hai's words, the people here couldn't help but sigh with emotion. What a terrible guy. However, before they could react, the second dish was served. Once they saw it, they couldn't stay calm anymore. Because the second dish was abalones, all of which were abnormally large and top-grade abalones. Each of them was lying on the plate, stripped of their shells, and cut with a knife to form a grid that looked like kidney flowers. Braised abalone. When this thing was served, Zhang Hai's appetite was somewhat moved. Needless to say, Huang Yunfei and the others picked up their mobile phones again. It was simply intolerable if they didn't take pictures of this thing. However, just as they finished taking pictures of the abalones, the sea cucumbers were served. These sea cucumbers were all abnormally big, and naturally attracted a lot of attention. After the lobster, abalone, and sea cucumbers, it was the beef. The beef was divided into two parts. The first part was stewed beef, and the second part was fried steak. When these things were served, it naturally attracted a lot of attention. Because they all knew that Zhang Hai's beef was not ordinary. It was sold for a few thousand yuan per catty in China. Now they could eat as much as they wanted. What could be better than this? After the beef, there was mutton, pork, prawns, crabs, cod. Zhang Hai had a lot of delicious food here. Although many of the fish were not ripe yet, when the large yellow croakers, Yangtze swordfish, and even Chinese bahaba fish matured, how terrifying would Zhang Hai's dining table be? Even so, salmon, blue-finned golden spear, and the like were not on the dining table now. Just the 16 dishes on the table were enough to dazzle the eyes of these people. After the last dish was served, Zhang Hai ordered everyone to move their chopsticks instantly. They first ate the abalone, then the lobster, then the sea cucumbers, the steak, and so on. They were really stuffing food directly into their mouths. These good things were not so easy to eat in China. Looking at Huang Yunfei, Su Wei, Fu Yuan, and even Huang Yunfei's wife, LV Zhao, Aphrodite and the others who sat down to eat at Zhang Hai's request couldn't help but smile. This reminded them of when they first arrived here. Perhaps because they felt the laughter of these people, Fu Yuan and Su Wei couldn't help but stop sweeping. Then, they smiled a little awkwardly and gently pushed Huang Yunfei beside them. Huang Yunfei also felt that it might not be good to eat like this. After all, they were in front of so many beautiful women. In their eyes, Zhang Hai was really surrounded by beautiful women. Aphrodite and the others had a unique exotic charm that added a lot of points to them. In addition, these girls were not bad to begin with. Coupled with Zhang Hai's spiritual energy transformation, their appearance, figure, and temperament had some qualitative leaps and bounds. As for Delina and Marion, they were naturally two beauties who had already begun to take shape. As for Bernice and Xiao Ye, they were already very good-looking. When they sat there, one looked like an iceberg female doctor while the other looked like an ice fairy. They couldn't help but want to take a few more glances. Being surrounded by so many beautiful women was actually quite stressful. Especially Huang Yunfei's wife, LV Zhao. In fact, LV Zhao's appearance was not bad. Although ordinary people were not particularly good-looking, they were not ugly either. According to the standards of domestic internet celebrities, she could be given 75 points. But here, it seemed like she couldn't even pass the passing mark. She was like an ugly duckling in a flock of white swans. The pressure was considerable. But fortunately, these delicious food diverted her attention. In front of delicious food, pressure and whatnot were temporarily put aside. In this way, the three men deliberately restrained themselves and finished the meal. But even if they restrained themselves, they still ate a lot. After eating all the food, Aphrodite and the others packed up and were about to leave. But before leaving, Aphrodite deliberately asked Zhang Hai's ear if she needed to arrange for them to come over tonight. Considering that they had been sitting in business class for the whole day, Zhang Hai was also a little tired, so she told them to talk about it tomorrow. After hearing Zhang Hai's words, Aphrodite first took Huang Yunfei and his wife, Su Wei, and Fu Yuan to the room that was already prepared for them. The room was also Zhang Hai's standard guest room. In the room, there was air conditioning, a big bed, a TV, a wardrobe, a bathroom, and so on. It could be said that it was not worse than the big bedroom in an ordinary hotel. Moreover, there was a hint of the smell of home. After everyone entered the room, Su Wei and Fu Yuan first took the photos in their phones and showed them off. Then, they took a shower and went to bed. As for Huang Yunfei and LV Zhao, they also packed up and prepared to rest. But lying on the bed, LV Zhao looked at Huang Yunfei strangely. She was really curious. Was Huang Yunfei's friend really like what he said? I say, this friend of yours, is he really a cattle breeder? LV Zhao asked strangely as she stuffed herself into Huang Yunfei's arms. Yes, but I never thought that his life would be so extravagant. Hearing his wife's words, Huang Yunfei couldn't help but nod. Thinking back to the scene he saw tonight, he still couldn't get over it. Chapter 599. What was a man's dream? Waking up to control the world, getting drunk and lying on a beauty's lap. Of course, this was just a dream. Which man didn't watch TV when he was young and fantasize about being an emperor? In today's society, it was impossible to get drunk and control the world. After all, in the entire imperial court, there was only one person who had the final say. One person among the 1.3 billion. Obviously, they didn't have the brain or the life. But getting drunk and lying on a beauty's lap could still be considered, but unfortunately, this wasn't something that ordinary men could do. After all, the beauties now were all expensive. Of course, this didn't refer to some special industries. A good woman, beautiful, gentle, slender, diligent and thrifty. These were all possible. The problem was that such a good woman, if she didn't go to film, then the person who pursued her would be unfaithful. It wasn't an easy thing to get drunk and lie on her lap. At least, Xueqi and the others didn't have this idea. Originally, Zhang Hai didn't have this idea, but now he disdained to get drunk and lie down. After returning to his room, Zhang Hai looked at the photos posted by the three people. After leaving a comment, he went to bed. Although he slept for a long time on the plane, to be honest, he didn't sleep well. It was more comfortable to sleep in his own bed. Although he was used to sleeping on a soft bed in the past half a month, sleeping on this white jade bed was indeed a bit uncomfortable, but it was still okay. The night was silent. Early the next morning, Zhang Hai got up, yawned, cleaned up the room, and walked out of the door. But when he came out, he found that Fu Yuan and the others had been waiting outside for a long time. At this time, they were standing in Zhang Hai's parking lot, taking photos with Zhang Hai's luxury cars. Zhang Hai had a lot of good cars here such as Rolls-Royce Battleshield, F750, and so on. These cars would attract a lot of attention in China. Now, they could take photos as they pleased. They could even sit inside and take photos. Such opportunities were rare. They're all up. Rubbing his eyes and looking at the people outside, Zhang Hai whispered. At this time, Bernice, who had finished her exercise in the gym, also came out. She glanced at the people outside and said to Zhang Hai, "Oh, your friends, they can get up much earlier than you." They got up at about 6 o'clock. After coming to the gym to take a look, they went out to take photos. Bernice said as she wiped her sweat. The weather outside had been getting colder recently. Although Winthrop's weather was not as cold as Bing City's, it was best to do other sports indoors except for running outside. Hearing her words, Zhang Hai glanced at her and found that she was still wearing her usual exercise clothes. The pants and shirt perfectly outlined her body. No wonder Fu Yuan and the others, who were originally visiting the villa, ran outside. You should wear more clothes when there are guests at home. Looking at Bernice's clothes, Zhang Hai said with some displeasure. What? Are you jealous? Hearing Zhang Hai's jealous words, Bernice couldn't help but look at him and said with a smile. Why would I be jealous? I'm afraid you will be taken advantage of. Rolling his eyes at Bernice, Zhang Hai pushed her directly into her room, then shook his head. Jealous? Maybe not, who knows? You guys got up so early. Putting aside these thoughts for the time being, Zhang Hai walked down the stairs and then walked out of the room. Hey, you finally got up. We remembered that we were going out to play today. We didn't sleep much. Seeing Zhang Hai walk out, Xueqi greeted him immediately and then said with a smile. He had never gone out to sea before. In fact, it wasn't only him, Huang Yunfei and his wife also haven't experienced it. When Fu Yuan came last time, although he went out to sea, he was only on Zhang Hai's boat. He also hasn't been on a proper yacht. Now, he is very anxious. Look at you guys. Have breakfast first, then let's go. Looking at their eager look, Zhang Hai said with a smile, then led everyone to have a simple breakfast. Zhang Hai has been here for a year, and he is used to the breakfast here. Although it is not as refreshing as tofu pudding and youtiao, the breakfast here is still good. A big bowl of cheddar soup, coupled with toast, milk, and fried ham and eggs, tastes very good. After breakfast and cleaning up, Zhang Hai took the 3 men and 1 woman to the beach on 2 off-road motorcycles. Driving by Zhonghai's river, looking at the river beside him and the grassland further away, and the herd of cattle and sheep that had been released by Robbins Garcia on the grassland, to be honest, such a beautiful scenery is really refreshing. Zhonghai, I didn't expect your place to be so beautiful. Looking at everything in the distance, Huang Yunfei couldn't help but say with emotion. That's right. If this was my territory, even if you gave me the position of mayor, I would still change. Hearing Huang Yunfei's words, Xueqi also followed up, but halfway through, he realized that he couldn't resist the temptation. Hearing what they said, Zhonghai couldn't help but laugh. Mayor? If it were him, he wouldn't change. Because this is what he is pursuing. Along the way, he looked at the grassland and then at the forest. From time to time, some pheasants, hares, and birds flew by at low altitude. This scene is a perfect fusion of nature and modernity. After settling down and looking at it, it is really a different feeling. But unfortunately, Zhonghai didn't give them too much time to be artistic. Soon, the two off-road motorcycles had already arrived at the dock. Boss, you are back. Seeing that the motorcycles were parked, Edward Anderson and the others walked out of the cabin at the dock. Seeing that it was Zhonghai and his friends, Edward Anderson couldn't help but smile and say. Hearing his words, Zhonghai also waved at him. After parking the motorcycles, he walked over. These are my friends from Huaxia. Today, they are going out to sea on my yacht. Please help me prepare. Looking at Edward Anderson, Zhonghai said to him. Hearing that Zhonghai was going out to sea, Edward Anderson waved his hand, and Tommy Charles, Eleanor Cece, and Andrew Christian all came out of the room. Now, Marlon Rupert and Belle Lester have already gone to patrol. Knowing that Zhonghai was going out to sea, they also began to check radio, satellite positioning, fuel gauge, various instruments, fresh water, fuel, etc. Of course, in addition to some food. Seeing that Zhonghai's 3 men were busy, Xueqi and others were too embarrassed to watch from the side, so they also went to help. Zhonghai and Edward Anderson chatted about the situation after he left. After learning that their seafood consumption reached a new high in November, Zhonghai also smiled. This was all within the scope of his plan. In addition to the consumption, he also got a piece of bad news. That is, someone took a fancy to Winthrop. Of course, that person didn't say that he wanted to come here to be the mayor or buy this place directly, but he took a fancy to the location here and wanted to build a factory here. Hearing this, Zhonghai frowned. Edward Anderson didn't know what kind of factory it was, but in Zhonghai's view, any factory must have some problems. Now that the town's tourism industry was developing well, there was no need to rely on these things to make money. After all, in his view, any factory must cause pollution to the atmosphere, water, and land. Using the present to overdraft the future, unless Zhonghai's brain was damaged, not to mention others, Zhonghai would absolutely not agree to it. But what he thought, Mayor Wallace probably thought of it too, so he wasn't very worried. After chatting with Edward Anderson for a while, Zhonghai's boat was also ready. After informing Edward Anderson, Zhonghai got on the boat, started the engine, and sailed towards the sea. As soon as the boat left the port, Xueqi, Fu Yuan, and Huang Yunfei on the boat screamed excitedly. Although they had never been on a boat before, it was their first time going out to sea on such a yacht. When they were under the boat, they had already taken a lot of photos. Now that they were on the boat and going out to sea, they directly took photos. Especially Huang Yunfei and his wife, LV Zhao. No woman wouldn't be tempted by these materialistic things. LV Zhao, who was very quiet yesterday, was very excited today. After Zhonghai set the route, he walked out of the cabin and looked at the excited people on the deck. Zhonghai couldn't help but laugh. He turned back to the kitchen and took out a box of cold beer. Zhonghai didn't know what to say. He went back to the kitchen and took out a box of cold beer. Wow, Zhonghai, you are so generous. How can there be no beer in such a beautiful scenery? Looking at the beer, Fu Yuan ran over with a smile, picked up a bottle of beer, opened it with a lighter, and then raised his head to drink. But he was stopped by Zhonghai. He was drinking clear beer. This kind of beer was very light and refreshing, but the alcohol content was not small. And drinking this kind of beer, in addition to being cold, it was best to add some lemon juice. The taste was quite good. The last time he came, Although Fu Yuan also drank this kind of beer, Zhang Hai didn't drink it at that time, let alone him. This was also something he learned after going to the Caribbean Sea. Seeing Zhang Hai cut a lemon and then squeeze a little lemon juice into it, Fu Yuan shook the bottle with some doubts and then took a sip. People in Bing City like to drink beer, and so did Fu Yuan. As soon as the beer entered his stomach, Fu Yuan's eyes lit up. "Why is this wine so delicious?" Fu Yuan asked curiously as he looked at the wine bottle in front of him that was written in a foreign language. "Of course, otherwise I wouldn't drink this kind of thing." Hearing his words, Zhang Hai also laughed. Chapter 600. Zhang Hai only liked to drink two kinds of beer, Corona and Budweiser. Both of these beers were rather light, and there was almost no bitterness in them at all. Paired with lemon juice, it was like a cocktail. The taste was about the same, but there was a bit of steam. It was like a carbonated alcoholic drink. It was different from the so-called pineapple beer. The taste was quite good, and there was a bit of alcohol in it. At least, it was not worse than ordinary beer. Ordinary beer's original juice concentration was about 9% to 11%. This kind of beer was more than 11%. Although it was only a little more than 10%, it meant that its alcohol content was not lower than ordinary beer. But this kind of beer was better than ordinary beer. Of course, this was not absolute. If Zhang Hai's father's generation drank it, they would say, "How is this good?" It was like water, and there was no alcohol taste at all. In this regard, Zhang Hai had nothing to say. For example, Edward Anderson and Robbins Garcia did not like to drink this kind of beer. They preferred to drink Cowboy Song's home-brewed barley beer, but Bell and the others liked to drink this. After Zhang Hai tasted it once, he stored a lot of this kind of beer at home. There were more choices in the United States than in China. He could buy beer from almost all the countries in the world here. The famous German and Huaxia beers were available here. But when it comes to drinking, he still likes to drink these two kinds. Hearing Zhang Hai and Fu Yuan's conversation, Huang Yunfei and Xueqi also came over. After opening a bottle, they took a sip and couldn't help but nod secretly. There was no taste, and it was particularly refreshing. After adding some lemon juice, their eyes unconsciously widened. It was really delicious. Looking at Huang Yunfei's appearance, LV Zhao also walked over curiously and took a sip. Then she also liked the taste. But she was different from Huang Yunfei and Zhang Hai. After all, she was a woman, so she just held a bottle and drank. It's boring to just drink and look at the sky. Let's fish for lunch. Zhang Hai Bei finished a bottle of beer very quickly. Then, he looked at his buddies and suggested to them. Hearing Zhang Hai's words, these people were a little eager to try. It was indeed not good to come here without fishing. So they went to the cabin and took out Zhang Hai's fishing rod. Zhang Hai only put a total of 3 fishing rods here, one for each of them. Then they put on the fake bait, which was specially bought by Zhang Hai after the night fishing, and started fishing. "Zhang Hai, don't you want to fish?" Looking at the 3 people holding a fishing rod, under the command of Fu Yuan, who once fished at sea, they started fishing. Well, Fu Yuan also fished here because of Zhang Hai. Except for him, no one else has fished at sea, but it seems that they are really good at it. And LV Zhao stood beside Huang Yunfei and looked at Zhang Hai standing next to him. She couldn't help but ask him. In her opinion, her husband, the 3 of them snatched Zhang Hai's fishing rod and left Zhang Hai out there in the sun. Fishing. Hearing LV Zhao's question, Zhang Hai smiled and began to arrange the fishing line around him. "But you don't have a fishing rod. How can you fish?" "Yunfei, give the fishing rod to Zhang Hai." Hearing Zhang Hai say that he wants to fish, LV Zhao couldn't help but ask him with some doubts. Then she turned to look at Huang Yunfei and asked him to give up a fishing rod first. But now Huang Yunfei is in a good mood, directly asking him to return the fishing rod. He is somewhat unwilling. Hearing Zhang Hai's words, several people here can't help but frown and look at Zhang Hai in unison. "No need for fishing rods, let them use these things, I can catch more than them without a fishing rod." Especially Huang Yunfei, who kept the fishing rod, looked at Zhang Hai and said loudly, "You're bragging, you don't need a fishing rod, let me see." Hearing his words, Zhang Hai looked at him with contempt, then took a fake bait and hung it on his fishing line, then tied a lot of colorful stripes on the fishing line. Under their gaze, Jiang Hai directly threw the fishing line into the sea. You don't know it, but it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Today I will open your eyes. Looking at Jiang Hai pulling the fishing line and preparing to fish, several people were a little confused. Jiang Hai is not crazy. And Jiang Hai actually dared to say such words at this time? I think you are really, damn, you really took the bait. Xueqi, who was the closest to Jiang Hai, was just about to mock Jiang Hai. But he didn't expect that Jiang Hai suddenly began to reel in the fishing line, and he saw a fish jumping out of the water on the fishing line in the distance. Where? Really? Damn, what the hell is this? Does this sea look at people? Following Xueqi's strange cry, several other people came over and watched Jiang Hai quickly reel in the fishing line. And when the fishing line was completely retracted, a fish about the size of a palm was already jumping on the fake bait. What kind of fish is this? Looking at the palm-sized fish, Fu Yuan was also a little confused and asked Jiang Hai. This is a small tuna fish, it is useless, it doesn't taste good, this is used as bait. Hearing his words, Jiang Hai also smiled and explained to him. Yes, now Jiang Hai is using the fishing technique that he was shocked by the local girl when he was in the Caribbean. A fishing line, some colored rope, and a hook can catch fish. Compared to this kind of fishing method, using a fishing rod to fish was indeed much more lowly. Of course, professionals still have to use a fishing rod because only a fishing rod can catch big fish. This kind of fishing, except for catching some brainless carnivorous fish, has no effect on some smart big fish. But this thing is enough to scare Fu Yuan and the others. After watching Jiang Hai take the small tuna fish off the hook and throw it into the tank next to him, the four people stopped fishing and just looked at the fish. However, Jiang Hai didn't stay idle. He threw the fishing line into the sea again, waiting for the fish to bite the bait. In less than a minute, another small tuna fish took the bait. Now Jiang Hai and the others are still in Jiang Hai's sea area. Because Jiang Hai's sea area is too rich in spiritual energy, it attracted a large number of fish. Although some of these fish are cruising around the world, when the fish enter this area, they are reluctant to leave, such as those tuna fish. In addition to these fish, some other fish in the sea will also be reluctant to leave after swimming over and take root here. This is also why Jiang Hai is not worried about the food problem of Big Fool, the 14 dolphins, and his newly collected Roger, king sour squid. Because these foreign species are abnormally rich, it is enough for them to eat. And those large carnivores, such as sharks, are attracted by these foreign species. In front of a king sour squid, a sand tiger shark that is bigger than a great white shark, plus a shark that is also not small, plus 14 dolphins, those sharks have no other choice but to run away. So imagine, when Jiang Hai starts fishing next year, what will his harvest be like? It's a little scary just thinking about it. This kind of small tuna fish is originally a warm and tropical species, but Jiang Hai also has a lot of them. About half an hour or so, Jiang Hai has already caught more than 20 such small tuna fish. Seeing Jiang Hai constantly pulling up the fish, Huang Yunfei and the others also put aside their initial curiosity and wanted to go fishing, but this thing also requires skill. With their mediocre skills, it is not easy to catch these fish. In half an hour, only Fu Yuan, who has fished before, caught a sea bass by sheer luck. But in Jiang Hai's view, this fish should be used as bait because this little guy is too small, about 10 centimeters. But Fu Yuan was so excited that he hugged the fish and took a photo. As a result, he accidentally let the fish jump into the water. Okay, it's almost done. After calculating in his mind, Jiang Hai said after pulling back the last small tuna fish. What? You don't want to fish anymore? Didn't you say that this kind of fish is not delicious? Hearing Jiang Hai say that it's almost done, Dian Yunfei and the others were still not satisfied. But at sea they would not question Jiang Hai, so they just asked with some doubts. No, you guys go ahead. I mean, these small fish are almost done. These fish are not edible. I will use them to get some edible fish for you. After Jiang Hai finished speaking, he smiled and took back the fishing line. Then he took down the fake bait and scooped up a small tuna. He used his tactical dagger and easily killed the fish with a few cuts. Then he removed the fins and scratched some wounds on them. Then he picked up the fish, hung it on the hook tied to the fishing line, and threw the line into the sea. After that they just had to wait. The fish they were going to catch this time were bigger carnivorous fish, which were much more difficult to catch than small tuna fish. Seeing Zhang Hai's actions, although Huang Yunfei and the others didn't say anything, they were all thinking in their hearts. What kind of fish is Zhang Hai trying to catch? But they looked at Zhang Hai suspiciously for a long time, and there was no movement from Zhang Hai's side. Gradually, they stopped paying attention to Zhang Hai's side. But at this moment, Zhang Hai suddenly moved. He quickly put away the fishing line. As soon as they saw Zhang Hai's actions, everyone focused their attention on him. However, they couldn't see what Zhang Hai was trying to pull. When the fishing line was about 3 or 4 meters away from the ship's deck, they could see that on the other end of the fishing line, there was a slender fish, almost a meter long, struggling to pull the line. Fish, what a big fish! Looking at the big fish under the water, LV Zhao couldn't help but exclaim excitedly. Zhang Hai also gestured to everyone, and in an instant, he pulled the fish directly to the platform. After the fish reached the platform, it began to struggle violently, wanting to jump back into the sea, but even so, it didn't open its mouth. Chapter 601. What the hell, what kind of fish is this? It's so big and it looks so fierce. Looking at the struggling fish, Fu Yuan couldn't help but come over and wanted to catch the fish to take a look, but Zhang Hai stopped him one step ahead of him. You don't want your finger, you dare to touch it when you don't know what kind of fish it is. Hearing Zhang Hai's words, Fu Yuan was a little confused. Isn't it just a fish? Although it's a little big, it's not big enough to bite off my finger. This is barracuda, also known as sea wolf. Look at these fangs. This fish has a strong vitality and is quite ferocious. If you touch its mouth before it dies, it definitely won't mind tasting human flesh. Looking at everyone's puzzled eyes, Zhang Hai said to them. Then he picked up the stick that had been prepared long ago and directly hit the fish to death. Then he opened the fish's mouth and took out the small tuna that had been bitten by it, but there was no way to use it. He directly threw it into the sea to feed the fish. To catch new fish, he needs to change the bait. What the hell, this thing is so fierce. I want to hold it and take a picture. Come on, Xueqi, help me take a picture. Hearing Zhang Hai's introduction, Fu Yuan's eyes couldn't help but shine. He picked up the fish with a serious face and asked Xueqi to take a picture for him with a smile. Of course, after he finished taking pictures, Xueqi, Huang Yunfei, and LV Zhao all took pictures. For them, this fish, which is almost 1.5 meters long, is a big fish. Even if they didn't catch it, they were very happy. After everyone took pictures, they also put the fish in a box full of ice next to them according to Zhang Hai's instructions. According to Zhang Hai, this is called ice fresh, and it will taste good later. After dealing with the fish, Xueqi and the others continued to fish, but they put more of their thoughts on Zhang Hai. They are waiting to see if Zhang Hai can catch more and better fish. This time, they didn't have to wait too long. After about 10 minutes, Zhang Hai began to quickly reel in the line again. As soon as they saw Zhang Hai reel in the line, the people here surrounded him. Zhang Hai's reel in the line was very fast, even faster than the reel in with a fishing rod. Not long after, the other end of the line appeared on the sea level. This time, Zhang Hai didn't catch a barracuda, but a sea bass. It's the same species as the one Fu Yuan caught just now, but it's much worse in size. If Zhang Hai's fish is his grandson, then this fish is his grandfather. Although it hasn't been pulled out of the water yet, the fish on Zhang Hai's side has begun to show its size. The one caught by Fu Yuan is only about 10 centimeters long, but the one caught by Zhang Hai is almost no shorter than the barracuda just now. It's about 1 meter long. Otherwise, it would be impossible to eat a whole small tuna. This fish is not like the barracuda. Its body is slender. This fish looks a bit like the fat head fish. It has a big head, a big mouth, and a wide body. Zhang Hai looked at the fish and without saying a word, he directly threw it on the platform. Then he directly killed it with a stick and lifted the fish up. With this lift, Zhang Hai couldn't help nodding with satisfaction. This fish is less than 1 meter long. It may be a little short. The weight is about 15 kilograms, which is about 30 kilograms. The difference is not big. The barracuda is about 20 kilograms. The two fish are 50 kilograms. After removing the head, the internal organs, and the bones, more than 20 kilograms of meat can be obtained, which is enough for Zhang Hai and others to eat. After all, this is his own fishing ground. Jiang Hai doesn't plan to fish too much. These 2 fish are enough. After this fish was put on the table, it naturally attracted a large wave of photos and showing off. After everyone took photos, Jiang Hai also poured the rest of the small tuna back into the sea, and then began to clean up with the 2 fish, removing the head, bleeding, scraping the scales, and removing the internal organs. After a series of things were done, Jiang Hai also began to deal with the meat. These sea fish have a big bone. Unlike the river fish which have many small burrs, these sea fish don't have many bones. He went up and cut down the back of the fish, and a fish bone was shaved out. Of course, there is still a lot of meat on the fish bone, but Jiang Hai disdains to eat this meat. After staying in the United States for a long time, he has developed the habit of wasting food. Holding 4 fish, Jiang Hai went up to marinate the fish. Because of Jiang Hai, Huang Yunfei and the others didn't want to fish. At least, they didn't want to fish today. After putting away the fishing rod, they went to the upper deck. In the living room, they watched TV, drank beer, and watched Jiang Hai marinate the fish there. This made these 4 people quite happy. The TV in Jiang Hai's yacht is a satellite TV, and it can also be received by domestic stations. Of course, the premise is that it has to be on the satellite. Some local stations can't receive it. Watching Hua Xia on a yacht in the United States, enjoying the sea breeze, drinking beer, and waiting for delicious food. Is there anything more beautiful than this? Not long after, Jiang Hai finished marinating the fish. Then, he took a charcoal stove to the deck. Today, they are going to roast the fish. This time, they can't be lazy. They also gathered there and got busy. Those who burned the charcoal, those who took the tables and chairs, and those who cleaned the bowls and chopsticks cleaned the bowls and chopsticks. There is strength in numbers. Not long after, they are almost done. After the charcoal is burned, it needs to be burned for a while before it can be roasted. Jiang Hai and the others also took advantage of this time to take a look at the yacht's steering room. After everything is done, Jiang Hai and the others took the marinated fish and the beef from home to the deck and began to roast. Although these fish are not raised by Jiang Hai, after all, they have absorbed the spiritual energy of Jiang Hai, so when they are roasted, the taste of the meat is quite good. Although it can't be compared to the taste of beef and lobster, in terms of fish alone, the taste of these 2 big fish is already not worse than the general yellow-fin golden spear. Of course, the difference in price is very big. However, for Huang Yunfei and the others, these fish are also very delicious. Some words of praise are constantly brushed in his circle of friends. Many people are envious, jealous, and hateful. Of course, what they hate is that they can't replace them to go there to play. Jiang Hai, your life is too corrupt. After taking a sip of beer, Huang Yunfei couldn't help but sigh. In terms of making money, he naturally can't make as much as Jiang Hai, but he is also a person who doesn't lack money. However, compared with his daily work, he is really far behind Jiang Hai. The gap is already not easy to describe with words. Living in such a big villa every day, surrounded by beautiful women, beasts in the mountains, cattle and sheep on the land, seafood in the sea, he can eat whatever he wants. If he is not happy, he will drive the yacht to the sea. At home, he can also ride a horse, play with guns and so on. This kind of life is really enviable to others. A year ago, who would have thought that Jiang Hai would be like this? At that time, these brothers also thought that Jiang Hai's greatest development in the future may be that he may reconcile with Xueqi and then go to Xueqi's company to do something. Who would have thought that he would actually live such a godlike life? After listening to his words, Jiang Hai also chuckled. In fact, not only him, but Jiang Hai also didn't think that he would live such a godlike life one day. But sometimes, things are so sudden. Who would have thought? The group of people had a very happy lunch. If they couldn't eat, they would wash it with water and then throw it directly into the sea. These fish will not be wasted in the sea. After all, they are not going home to feed ornamental fish. There is not much difference between raw and cooked meat. After everything was done, Jiang Hai and the others returned to the dock around 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Then, they changed to a small boat and went directly to the coral reef. In the afternoon, Jiang Hai arranged for them to snorkel. They certainly can't do real diving. After all, they haven't learned how to do it, and Jiang Hai can't take them. However, it didn't matter if they were snorkeling. Ever since the sea was filled with spirit energy, plankton grew the most. The coral polyps, which fed on plankton, grew faster after eating plankton that contained spirit energy. Since March of this year, Zhanghai's coral group has almost doubled in size. Now, not only are there many coral groups in the sea about 10 meters deep, but there are also coral groups in the sea between 2 and 5 meters deep. The only pity is that these corals are still mainly gray and not beautiful at all. Zhanghai has already prepared to wait until next summer to introduce some colorful corals to make his underwater world colorful. Because the waterline on this side of the coral reef is very shallow, large ships can't sail over, but small boats can pass through unimpeded. After Zhanghai and the others arrived, everyone changed into their respective swimsuits in the cabin. They also prepared glasses and snorkeling tubes. Everything is ready. Zhanghai also told them what to pay attention to when they go into the water. Scorpions and sea snakes were definitely not to be touched. Jellyfish were definitely not to be touched. Sea anemones were definitely not to be touched. Sea slugs were definitely not to be touched. Colorful fishes were definitely not to be touched. Even if he saw a large reef cave, there might be eels or sharks inside. That was definitely not to be touched. After repeated reminders and confirming all the problems, Zhanghai and the others went into the water. Looking at the gray coral world on the surface of the water, Zhanghai didn't feel anything, but Huang Yunfei and the others were very excited. Fortunately, they still remembered Zhanghai's words to stay away from those dangers. At most, they would chase some small fish to play with. After playing here for about 2 hours, these people climbed onto the boat and returned to the dock, ready to go back for dinner. This was because they had eaten Zhanghai's food in the past 2 days. Otherwise, with their original weak bodies, they estimated that they couldn't even crawl after playing for 2 hours. They wouldn't be as unsatisfied as they were now. Chapter 602. Jiang, I missed you so much. Dana Taylor threw herself into Zhanghai's arms and looked at Zhanghai with an intoxicated expression. Then, without waiting for Zhanghai to react, she hugged Zhanghai's neck and kissed him again. Aphrodite did the same. She took the initiative to move her face closer. Although she didn't say it, it was obvious that she missed Zhanghai very much too. The party with Huang Yunfei and the others ended very early. Although their bodies had changed a little because of eating the things produced in Zhanghai's manner, the changes were really too little. Therefore, the party ended very early. After 8 o'clock, everyone went to experience Zhanghai's hot spring and went to bed. When Zhanghai returned to his room, Aphrodite and Dana had been waiting for a long time. Zhanghai was a little tired yesterday, so he didn't ask them to come over. But this morning, they had been waiting here. When the three of them met, it was naturally like lightning attracting fire. They were instantly attracted to each other like two polar magnets. Their lips and teeth intertwined, and the temperature between the three of them rose rapidly. There was nothing much to say about what happened next. Unknowingly, the three of them also came to Zhanghai's white jade bed. Dana was more proactive than Aphrodite. She took off her top in an instant, but when she took off her lower body, she hesitated for a moment. Only then did Zhanghai notice that Dana was wearing a pair of black stockings on her lower body today. I heard that you like them, so I bought them. Do you want me to wear them? Seeing Zhanghai's gaze, Dana giggled and looked at Zhanghai. Hearing what she said, Zhanghai shook his head. I don't have any special interest in these things. It was hard for him to understand men's love for these stockings. At least, he didn't have any feelings for these things. It was another matter when it was fast, but when there was time to fill it. He preferred the state where both of them were naked. Hearing Zhanghai's words, Dana couldn't help but curl her lips and take off her stockings. She prepared a lot of pairs of stockings for you. Black, white, long tube, suspenders, mesh, all kinds. But I know she's thinking too much. You won't like them. Hearing what Zhanghai said, Aphrodite couldn't help but laugh. Indeed, compared to Dana, Aphrodite knew Zhanghai better. Well, let's not care about that. Let's do it. Looking at Dana again, Zhanghai laughed and pulled her directly into his arms. There was nothing more to say after that. As the saying goes, absence makes the heart grow fonder. Of course, what he needed the most was Aphrodite and Dana. They were very proactive at this time, and Zhanghai naturally wouldn't be passive. Since he had made up his mind to keep them by his side, there was no need to say anything more. It was that simple. It was a quiet night, but the smell in Zhang Hai's room wasn't very good. As October approached, it was no longer possible to sleep with the windows open at night. And if the windows were closed, the smell wouldn't spread out. Of course, Zhang Hai didn't have to think about this because the next morning, when Aphrodite and Dana left, they would open the windows. When Zhang Hai woke up after 8 in the morning, the air in the room was fresh again. After washing his face and brushing his teeth, Zhang Hai pulled himself together, put on his clothes, and walked downstairs. He found that not many people were awake today. Huang Yunfei and his wife didn't wake up. Only Su Wei and Fu Yuan were awake. The two of them didn't go outside to look at the car. Instead, they stayed in Zhang Hai's living room and looked at Zhang Hai's huge fish tank. When they came the day before yesterday, they had already noticed this fish tank, but they hadn't looked at it carefully. In the end, they couldn't help but be a little surprised when they saw it. Su Wei didn't know much about fish, but he also knew that this should be a golden dragon and a red dragon. Fu Yuan was in the inspection business. He had been to many real estate companies and the like, and business had to pay attention to feng shui. And the feng shui, of course, was to use a fish tank. The fish raised in it were also very particular, and dragons were inevitable. So he roughly knew the price of these arowana. He didn't know the specifics, but he knew that it was definitely worth a lot. I say, when did you raise these fish? Seeing Zhang Hai wobbling down, Fu Yuan immediately asked. Raised them for a month? Looking at these arowana swimming in the water, Zhang Hai thought for a moment and said, A month? Can you raise them so big in a month? Pointing to the fish in the water, Fu Yuan obviously didn't believe it. Are you stupid? I didn't buy babies. Rolling his eyes, Zhang Hai said to him. He didn't say how these arowana came about. After all, it was quite troublesome to explain. You should know that buying and selling arowana is not allowed in the United States. It is illegal. Hearing Zhang Hai's words, Fu Yuan froze for a moment, then touched his chin. Indeed, it's not like Zhang Hai can't afford to buy adult arowana. But these things are very expensive. But when he thought of the price of these things, to be honest, he was a little conflicted. Yeah, it's really not cheap. I'm waiting for these arowana to give birth and then sell them back to Huaxia. Looking at the fish in the fish tank, Zhang Hai smiled and muttered. When he first got these fish, he also had the same idea. But what he wants to sell is not the ordinary gold dragon and red dragon. No matter how good the gold dragon and red dragon are, how much can they be worth? Excluding those that had been hyped up, the most expensive red fish that was sold for 2,685 million renminbi was only around 300,000 renminbi. The price of Zhang Hai's cow is equivalent to several red dragons of this level. Moreover, Zhang Hai's cows mature once a year. These red dragons and red dragons are only worth this price after living for a few years, so it's unrealistic to rely on these things to sell for money. Zhang Hai's target is the platinum dragon. The price of 300,000 renminbi for a baby is Zhang Hai's target. But the other arowana that are born can also be sold. It takes a long time to raise a red dragon that is worth hundreds of thousands of RMB. But generally, he can sell some small fish that are worth tens of thousands to Huaxia. Maybe we can do this business. When the time comes, we can open an aquarium shop. If your arowana are born, let us sell them. Hearing Zhang Hai's words, Fu Yuan's eyes suddenly lit up. In any case, Zhang Hai was going to sell his fish, so he might as well buy his fish. Although it is said that good friends are not suitable to do business together, because sooner or later they will fall out. But if it's just a relationship of buying and selling, it doesn't matter. He's just a little dissatisfied with his current job. After the new head of state of the imperial court came to power, many policies were introduced. Their originally lucrative industry was hit hard. Originally, it would not be a problem for him to make 10 to 20,000 yuan a month. But now, he could only make about 10,000 yuan a month after working himself to death. One had to know that he still had to provide for the house. Speaking of which, it was very sad. So it's no wonder that he wants to change careers. Hearing his words, Zhang Hai nodded his head in agreement. It's just some young arowana. Besides, it's not like Fu Yuan doesn't want to pay. He doesn't care about this. Since he wants to open such a shop, he'll give it to him. Anyway, if Zhang Hai's fish give birth, they will be distributed to China. At that time, it doesn't matter if he gives some to Fu Yuan. Seeing Zhang Hai nodding, Fu Yuan couldn't help but look at the fish again. At the same time, he also calculated in his heart. If he wants to open such a shop, how much risk and cost would there be? Looking at his appearance, Zhang Hai and Xueqi didn't disturb him. They went straight into the kitchen and began to prepare breakfast. When breakfast was almost ready, Huang Yunfei and his wife also came downstairs. Seeing that breakfast was ready, they didn't wait. They asked Fu Yuan to set up the table and tableware together. Then, it was time to eat breakfast. Today's breakfast is still more Western. Because Zhang Hai is very lazy, and Chinese food is more or less troublesome. Cheddar soup, bread, and sausages. But in addition, there is also milk. This milk is not bought outside, but produced in Zhang Hai's manor. When he bought cows last time, Zhang Hai specially bought a few Holstein cows, which are black and white Holstein cows. 2 of them are about to give birth. In less than half a month after returning, these 2 cows gave birth. The cows that gave birth to calves can produce milk. Zhang Hai also specially bought a set of milk production equipment for this. Of course, the milk that is directly squeezed out can't be drunk. It can only be drunk after it is mixed with hot water. But these are all left to Robbins Garcia. Robbins Garcia was an out-and-out old cowboy. He knew a lot about beef cattle, and he wasn't lacking in milk cows. Every day he would mix fresh milk. However, the milk production of 2 cows was enough to supply everyone in the manor. It wasn't enough to sell. Zhang Hai originally bought these cows for himself to drink milk, so he didn't think about selling them. There is a beef cattle economy, but milk cows? Zhang Hai doesn't care about making money. After eating an authentic Winthrop breakfast, everyone packed up. Zhang Hai took them to visit the town. Sitting on Zhang Hai's war shield, the group went directly to the town. At this time, the weather has turned cold. Winthrop, which was very popular a few months ago, has become a lot quieter recently. But there are still many tourists who have not left. Although they can't drink water now, the seafood is much more delicious than it was in the beginning. The mid-autumn crab fat is also the same in the United States. Seeing Zhang Hai's war shield driving into the town, not only will the people in the town take the initiative to greet Zhang Hai, but the tourists will also come over to get a discount from Zhang Hai. Now most of the people who come here to play are here to eat seafood, and Zhang Hai's seafood is famous here. It will not be wrong to get close to Zhang Hai. Along the way, the original half-hour drive took nearly an hour to arrive. But fortunately, they finally arrived. After parking the car in the town's parking lot, Zhang Hai took his friends for a stroll. Chapter 603. Wow, the economy here is really developed. They walked into the central district of the town, which was the commercial street. Speaking of which, other than this place, there was no other famous place in the town. As soon as they walked in, Huang Yunfei's wife couldn't take her eyes off of it. Women always have an abnormal obsession with shopping, and no one can stop them. Not to mention, this street was full of foreign products that were very good for her, so naturally, she couldn't take her eyes off of it. Your style is not right. I thought it was the same as on the way here, a rural town in the United States. Where did so many shops come from? However, compared to Huang Yunfei's wife, Huang Yunfei was a little scared. He didn't know the price of these shops, but Chinese people always subconsciously feel that foreign products should be very expensive. Although it's not that he couldn't afford it, he still felt a little sorry for his wallet. Now Winthrop is also a tourist attraction, so it can be considered a shopping street. However, although there seems to be a lot of things here, the prices are very cheap. These clothes are basically dozens of dollars, which is only a few $100s when converted to RMB, but the quality is much better than the hundreds of dollars in China. The basketball shoes over there are also very cheap. The James 13 basketball shoes sell for $1,599 in China, but on the official website here, the normal color matching shoes are only $200, and the special color matching shoes are only $245, which is more than $300 cheaper. It's even cheaper here. I saw it a few days ago. It seems to be $170, and they are all produced in the United States. The quality is better than the ones produced in South Vietnam. Looking at Huang Yunfei's stingy look, Zhang Hai also explained with a smile. Upon hearing Zhang Hai's words, Huang Yunfei and the others were stunned for a moment. To be honest, They originally thought that the shoes and clothes here would definitely not be cheap, but they didn't expect that the price was actually very affordable. No wonder there were so many people shopping here. Nearly half of the shops here belong to me, but I've rented them out. If you want to buy anything, you can buy it. The quality of the Western ginseng is better than that in China, and the price is not expensive. Generally, a 20-year-old wild Western ginseng is about $100. The ginseng is sold by the Iroquois, which is a branch of the Native Americans. It's all authentic. There are also some small accessories, which are all very good. Maple syrup is also a must when you go back, and that's for your parents. As for the clothes here, it's up to you. If you want to buy iPads, that's fine too. However, this time, they were just here to shop. If they wanted to buy something, they would have to wait until they were about to leave. Now was not the time to buy things. After shopping for about 2 hours, Zhang Hai took them to the Italian restaurant that he used to frequent. Unexpectedly, the Italian restaurant, which was only good at first, was overcrowded at this time. A large number of local tourists and Huaxia tourists gathered here. In fact, it also proved that the shop owner's cooking skills were really good. Otherwise, it would be impossible to attract so many people. The shop owner was very happy about this. When he saw Zhang Hai coming over, he was naturally very enthusiastic. He deliberately led Zhang Hai to a private room at the side. In fact, the private room was something that he had just recently set up because Huaxia people liked it. Otherwise, he wouldn't have had such a thing here before. Since Zhang Hai brought his friends to support him, the Italian boss naturally used his mixing technique and made an authentic Italian cuisine. To be honest, if Zhang Hai's parents were to eat this sweet and sour food, they would probably be depressed to death. Because their generation didn't like to eat this kind of taste, but Zhang Hai and the others tasted good. Everyone was quite satisfied with the lunch. When they checked out, they realized that the meal had only cost them $30, which was less than 200 yuan. Xueqi and the others were filled with emotion at the price. After lunch, the group of 5 left the restaurant. According to the original plan, they were going to the gun shop in the afternoon. The gun shop was in the town. After Zhang Hai and the others walked out of the commercial area, they went to the gun shop. But halfway through, they found that Mayor Wallace was walking around the town with some guys in suits and ties. Those people walked for a while and stopped to take photos of the nearby area. At the same time, Zhang Hai also noticed the helplessness on Mayor Wallace's face. Seeing this scene, Zhang Hai felt a little strange. Who could make the local tyrant Mayor Wallace unhappy? Mayor! Thinking of this, Zhang Hai waved at Mayor Wallace. Hearing Zhang Hai's voice, Mayor Wallace also looked over. When he saw that it was Zhang Hai, a hint of excitement flashed in his eyes. When did you come back? Seeing that Zhang Hai was here, Mayor Wallace said a few words to the people around him, then quickly walked to Zhang Hai's side and said to Zhang Hai with a smile. This time with Zhang Hai here, things may be much easier to handle. I just came back, what's the situation? Hearing Mayor Wallace's words, Zhang Hai asked strangely. Hey, you were gone for half a month. Something happened in the town. Looking at Zhang Hai, Mayor Wallace sighed. What's the matter? Looking at Mayor Wallace's appearance, Zhang Hai's brows wrinkled. He looked at the people who came over with a bad expression. They are people from Celanese Company. They want to build a factory here. Hearing Zhang Hai words, Mayor Wallace said helplessly. At the same time, looking at the people behind him, he was also a little speechless. Celanese. Hearing Mayor Wallace's words, Zhang Hai was a little confused. He had never heard of this company. Hello, my name is Peter ********, the head of the logistics department of Celanese Company. This time, I came to your town mainly to choose a factory site. Seeing that Mayor Wallace was so excited when he saw Zhang Hai, the leader of Celanese Company, a middle-aged white man, also knew that Zhang Hai should have a lot of influence in this town, so he took the initiative to introduce him. Hello, Zhang Hai. But I don't quite understand what you are talking about. Looking at the hand that reached over, Zhang Hai also shook his hand, then frowned and said with some confusion. To put it simply, our company has taken a fancy to the location of your town. The location of your town is still very good. It is very close to Boston and also very close to the airport. It can also be transported by sea. It can cover the eastern part of the United States and can also be sold overseas. So our company has decided to start production and build a factory here. Hearing Zhang Hai words, Peter also gave a brief introduction. But Zhang Hai was still confused because he didn't know what this Celanese company was about. Celanese is a chemical company. It is most famous for manufacturing chemical products, not allowed to write, and the like. It is also a manufacturer of high-performance engineering plastics. Looking at Zhang Hai's puzzled eyes, Mayor Wallace couldn't help but whisper to Zhang Hai. Hearing his words, Zhang Hai frowned instantly. Mayor, are you crazy? Why would our town recruit a chemical manufacturer to invest in it? Don't you want our land and ocean? Looking at Mayor Wallace in front of him, Zhang Hai's face was not very friendly, and he said with a questioning face. I think Mr. Zhang Hai has misunderstood us. The chemical products produced by our company are famous all over the world. Although our company is a chemical company, the products we produce do not pollute the atmosphere, water resources, and land. The U.S. government can testify for us. Hearing Zhang Hai's words, Peter hurriedly said. Pollution was a very serious topic abroad, but in this world, there was nothing that money couldn't solve, right? A chemical company saying that its products would not pollute the land, atmosphere, and water resources, who would believe it? As for what the government said, those who would believe it were pure fools. Whether others believed it or not, Zhang Hai did not believe it anyway. No matter what the mayor decides, I will never agree to let you in. It's as simple as that. Looking at Peter in front of him who was still trying to persuade him, Zhang Hai directly waved his hand and forcefully interrupted his words. Hearing Zhang Hai's tough words, the other party could not help but shrug and turn his head helplessly. But Zhang Hai noticed that when he turned his head, a trace of killing intent flashed in his eyes. But he hid it very well and was not discovered by Zhang Hai. I'll talk to you about this in the evening. Well, you should accompany your friend first. Seeing that Zhang Hai's words had dropped the atmosphere to the freezing point, Mayor Wallace stood up and tried to smooth things over. Hearing Mayor Wallace's words, Zhang Hai thought for a moment and did not say much. He believed that Mayor Wallace was not stupid. He should be able to understand the purpose of these people's arrival. Would they not pollute just because they said they would not pollute? Chemical factories, even if one were to think with their toes, would cause a lot of damage. Perhaps for ordinary people, the damage was still acceptable, but for Zhang Hai, it was absolutely unacceptable. He chose this place because of the good environment. If these factories moved in now, it would be a huge threat to Zhang Hai's upgrade. He could not let these people enter Winthrop no matter what. After glancing at these people, Zhang Hai nodded to Mayor Wallace. They would talk about it in the evening. Then, he took Fu Yuan and the others to the shooting range in the distance. Seeing Zhang Hai and the others leave, the people of Celanese narrowed their eyes. Everyone, this way please. Like I said, I don't have the slightest bit of confidence in you all moving in here. My townspeople aren't idiots to that extent. Looking at those people, Mayor Wallace spoke again. Chapter 604. What's the matter? Walking over with Zhang Hai, Huang Yunfei whispered to Zhang Hai. Although Zhang Hai and the others were speaking in English, they were also confused. But looking at the atmosphere just now, they felt that something was wrong. Nothing, those people are from a chemical factory and want to build a factory here. Hearing Huang Yunfei's words, Zhang Hai was also thinking about what was going on at this time. So he said casually, "Build a factory? Isn't that a good thing?" Hearing Zhang Hai's words, Su Wei and Fu Yuan also came over. A good thing? How can you tell that it's a good thing? Seeing these people's expressions, Zhang Hai was stunned. Is this a good thing? Of course, if a factory is built here, it will need workers, and it will solve the problem of making money for the people in the town. And the factory will naturally pay taxes for its profits. With a tax and the political system here in the United States, the money can be used to help the town increase its welfare and public facilities. Isn't this a good thing? Hearing Zhang Hai's words, Huang Yunfei couldn't help but say. What they said was actually reported in the domestic news. In China, if a small town, a small village, attracted investment and got a factory, it would be a big deal. Not only would it solve the problem of jobs for the people here, but it could also generate income for the local area. This is an out-and-out good thing. People in China are racking their brains to get the factory set up. Why does it look like Zhang Hai doesn't want this factory to open? What the hell is this? Are you mistaken? This is a chemical factory. A chemical factory. Hearing their words, Zhang Hai almost laughed out of anger. I heard them. Didn't they say they are from Celanese? I know this company. It mainly makes acetic acid, which is plastic. The toxicity of this thing is not too high. The environmental damage of this factory is okay. At least it is much better than paper factories, fertilizer factories, agricultural pharmaceutical factories, etc. Hearing Zhang Hai's words, Huang Yunfei waved his hand indifferently. Hearing their words, Zhang Hai was so angry that he laughed. If this happened in China, indeed, a plastic factory would not cause a big backlash. But if this is the case, then why did Zhang Hai come to the United States? Isn't it fine in China? Coming here was for a particularly clean environment. Winthrop's side was like a piece of white paper. If a drop of ink were to touch it, it would turn into a paste. In the eyes of the people in the country, the impact of the factory was not big, but Zhang Hai was completely unacceptable. It doesn't make sense to you. Winthrop's main focus is on the ecological environment. There is no environmental pollution at all. As long as I am here, no chemical factory can open here. Hearing Huang Yunfei's words, Zhang Hai said clearly. Hearing Zhang Hai's words, the few people here laughed. You are too serious. How is there no chemical factory? According to you, without these chemical factories, where would the plastic and paper come from? Where would the fertilizer and pesticides come from? Where would those chemical products come from? As long as they emit according to the standards, it will be fine. Indeed, for the people of China, making money is the most important thing. With the recent increase in awareness of environmental protection, the concept of environmental protection was raised. But environmental protection is not as important as money. No matter how little a chemical factory emits, it will still cause pollution. In China, these pollution will not attract much attention. This is also a negative situation brought about by the rapid development of society. It is the same in China now. When the US was developing rapidly, it was even worse than China. The economy was developing rapidly, but the land, air, rivers, and water were all polluted. The US spent decades to clean up the pollution. Now, only these rural areas had reached the most suitable state for human habitation. Some rich people, under such circumstances, also drank water imported from Northern Europe. They don't want to drink water from the US. This shows the impact of pollution on the environment. Some people might say that setting up a factory here will not cause too much pollution in the short term. After a few years of making money, they can close down the factory. This is a win-win situation. But Zhang Hai cannot accept this. The reason he came here was because the spirit qi here was increasing very quickly. He couldn't tolerate the slightest bit of pollution here. Indeed, just as Huang Yunfei had said, this world definitely needed plastic. These things would be built anywhere. Even if they were not built here, they would have to be built elsewhere. If they were built here, it would increase and stimulate the development of the local area. But Zhang Hai will absolutely, definitely, 10,000% not agree. This is a matter of principle. Okay, Winthrop must be maintained in a pure state. I can allow this place to become a tourist attraction, but I will never allow a chemical factory to be built here. So needless to say, I will definitely not allow this thing to be built. I can't tolerate the existence of pollution. Zhang Hai waved his hand and interrupted Huang Yunfei's words. He directly defined this matter. Hey, you've been abroad for a year. You're really getting more and more sentimental. This is not a big deal in China, but it's quite troublesome here. Hearing Zhang Hai's words, Huang Yunfei touched his nose and said with a smile. In fact, this matter had nothing to do with him. He was just casually talking about it. Seeing that Zhang Hai had already made a decision, he chose to shut up. Afterwards, the group of 5 went to the shooting range. Zhang Hai also had a stake in the shooting range, and it wasn't a small amount. Seeing that Zhang Hai had personally come, the shop assistants here were naturally very polite. They helped Huang Yunfei choose a gun and then taught them how to use it step by step. Naturally, this led to a wave of photos. These were all real guns. Except for Fu Yuan, other people have no chance to touch these real guns. Now that they touched them, it was really awesome. Even Huang Yunfei's wife, LV Zhao, was satisfied after shooting 5 magazines. But watching them shoot, Zhang Hai didn't play with them. First, because he doesn't care about these things now, and second, because he is still thinking about the chemical factory. Zhang Hai also listened to what Huang Yunfei said, although he will never let pollution enter Winthrop. However, the townspeople of Winthrop might not think that way. Although they were earning a lot more than before, no one would feel that having too much money was a problem. Huang Yunfei represented the thinking of the majority of the people. Since the government had said that the plastic produced by these people was not toxic, then they would subconsciously think that there was no pollution and that they could still make money without pollution. That was the best choice. In China, public opinion was very important, not to mention in the United States where human rights were constantly mentioned. It seems that Mayor Wallace, a sensible person, sometimes can't make the decision in the town, especially when many people are interested in this thing. Otherwise, he wouldn't be so excited to see me today. It seems that if I want to drive this company out, I have to rely on Zhang Hai's momentum. Thinking of this, Zhang Hai's heart couldn't help but sink. It seems that the other party may have come prepared. But in any case, Zhang Hai will definitely not let these people open the factory. This is not Zhang Hai's style. Everything will wait until Mayor Wallace comes in the evening. He will probably give Zhang Hai a satisfactory answer. After playing with guns here, the night quietly covered Winthrop town. Zhang Hai didn't go back for dinner today. Instead, he went to a burrito shop to let Huang Yunfei and the others try the authentic South American flavor. To be honest, they liked the sour, sweet, and spicy taste. After having a good meal, Zhang Hai drove back to his manor. At this time, in the manor, Bernice, Xiaoya, and the others have already eaten dinner. Huang Yunfei and the others have been running for the whole day. In the afternoon, they have been standing there shooting, so they are already a little tired. After taking a bath in the hot spring, they went back to their room to rest. Of course, they didn't necessarily sleep because there is internet, TV, and everything in the room. They can also lie on the bed to play. As for Zhang Hai, he laid on his white jade recliner. He remembered that Mayor Wallace said that he will come in the evening, so he is waiting for him. Mayor Wallace didn't let Zhang Hai wait for too long. At about 8:30 in the evening, his car also appeared in front of Zhang Hai's manor. Zhang Hai opened the door and let Mayor Wallace drive the car over. The car stopped. Looking at Zhang Hai sitting there, Mayor Wallace couldn't help but slow down his footsteps, but he still slowly walked over. He picked up a bottle of beer that Zhang Hai put next to him, opened it, and sat on another recliner, looking up at the starry sky while drinking beer. Looking at Mayor Wallace, Zhang Hai finally couldn't hold back and asked him, "Didn't you have something to tell me?" "Originally, I had something to tell you, but after seeing you, it's nothing. Because I know that even if the whole town goes crazy, you won't go crazy. And most importantly, the cards in your hands are much more important than that company." Looking at Zhang Hai, Mayor Wallace said with a smile, "Can you tell me what happened?" Hearing the old fox's words, Zhang Hai sighed. He knew what the old guy was talking about. Now, Zhang Hai and the town of Winthrop were closely related. Many people in Winthrop relied on Zhang Hai to eat. Not to mention his employees, those tourists from Huaxia were recruited by him. As long as he wanted, he could stop the tourists. The shooting range over there, the seaside villa, half of the shops on the commercial street. As long as Zhang Hai wanted, he could directly turn Winthrop from a new tourist town to its original state in an instant. And Zhang Hai could afford this money, but the townspeople couldn't. So even if it was to earn this money, the townspeople would do whatever Zhang Hai said. This was inevitable. From this point of view, Zhang Hai's influence had already surpassed that of Mayor Wallace. This was also the fundamental reason why Mayor Wallace was so calm. With Zhang Hai, they were already in an invincible position. Chapter 605. However, even if Zhang Hai stood firmly on this side, he still had to know what was going on. It all started a week ago. Hearing Zhang Hai's words, Mayor Wallace also took a sip of beer, then raised his head, looked at the stars in the night, and told Zhang Hai about it. This matter was mainly because of 3 people, Faraday Kirk, Hewley Kirk, and Augustine Wilson. Speaking of these three people, Zhang Hai also knew them. Faraday Kirk was Mayor Wallace's brother. He worked in the Boston Tourism Bureau and had a high position. When Winthrop wanted to apply to become a tourist attraction, he made things difficult for Wallace. Xueqi Kirk was Faraday Kirk's son. When he wanted to pursue Xueqi in the town, he was taught a lesson by Zhang Hai. For this person, Zhang Hai did not have a deep impression because he had only seen him once. The last person, Augustine Wilson, Zhang Hai still had a slight impression of him. He had met this person once a year ago. This person had a younger brother named Faraday Wilson. It seemed that there were quite a lot of bad guys named Faraday. Faraday Wilson used to work with Bunny and Wallen, the younger brother of Billy Wallen, whom Zhang Hai killed. The two of them once dealt with Zhang Hai. It was the first crisis Zhang Hai encountered after he came here, but these people were all sent to prison by Zhang Hai in the end. It was also because Zhang Hai was not so strong at that time. Otherwise, these people would not be in prison, but directly disappear from the world. Zhang Hai did not want to let go of these people who were a threat to him. There would be a day when they would be released from prison, so he preferred to strangle the danger in the cradle. Don't talk to him about the law or justice. Zhang Hai would not listen to these. He only knew that someone wanted to harm him, so he would kill him. However, even if these people didn't die, they wouldn't be able to come out for more than 10 years. Augustine Wilson was originally Faraday Wilson's brother. After Faraday's accident, he could no longer stay in this town. Later, he went to Boston, but after the first time the people in Boston found trouble with Zhang Hai, he fled. Perhaps he was afraid that Zhang Hai would catch him, so he fled far away and went to the central part of the United States, Texas. His original idea for coming here was very simple. He just wanted to rely on his cowboy skills to find a job here. However, after coming here, he realized what Texas did not lack the most. There was no shortage of cowboys. He was one of the top 100 in Winthrop, and he would be one of the last few in any town. Unable to find a job as a cowboy, he was finally hired by the Celanese Company, which was originally based in Texas. Later, the company wanted to expand its business in the East, and it would be best to find a port city. However, the company's current annual turnover was only about $5.9 billion. It was a lot of income, but for a company, it was not enough to easily find a piece of land in the eastern coastal area, where every inch of land was worth an inch of gold. Therefore, their initial target was New Jersey and Massachusetts. However, after their proposal was submitted, New Jersey directly rejected it. They could not easily let a chemical factory enter. If it was a local factory, it might be possible, but definitely not a foreign one. Massachusetts also rejected it because it was a chemical factory. However, compared to New Jersey, Massachusetts was not too tough. Therefore, the company went to do some public relations. In the end, Xueqi Kirk, who received the money, told his father about it. His father also wanted to take revenge on Winthrop, so he convinced the authorities that Winthrop might be able to do it. When the company's people arrived at Winthrop, they found that it was really suitable, so they told Mayor Wallace. Mayor Wallace naturally rejected it directly, but they did not give up. Later, they dug out Augustine Wilson, who was also from Winthrop, to persuade his fellow villagers. They wanted the people of Winthrop to believe that their chemical factory was not toxic and had no side effects. It would only be a positive development for the local economy, and there would be no vicious cycle. Although there were many commoners who didn't completely believe it, they also wanted to do as Huang Yunfei said. They wanted to let the factory be built first so that they could earn more money. If it really had an impact in the future, they could just close it down and rebuild it. It was precisely because of the townspeople's thinking that Mayor Wallace, who had rejected it very straightforwardly, felt helpless. Because some townspeople went to the town hall to make a scene, wanting to increase their income. Although Mayor Wallace was the local tyrant here, his power was not given by the American government, but by the local people. The people could elect him, but they could also dismiss him. It was precisely because of this that even though he made it clear that he didn't support them, the other party still sent a delegation to negotiate. He had to go along with them to deal with them, which led to the scene that Zhang Hai saw today. Hearing Mayor Wallace's words, Zhang Hai's fingernails gently tapped on the chair. So, there's a traitor among us? Looking at the stars in the sky, Zhang Hai did not want to see these things one day, but once the chemical factory was opened, who knew what would happen? At least, Zhang Hai would never agree to it. Traitor? It seems a bit overboard, but those people are really hateful. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Mayor Wallace could not help but feel a little conflicted. The culture of Huaxia and the culture of the United States were completely different. For example, in Huaxia, being captured during a war was a stain in one's life, and it could not be washed away. But in the United States, captives were allowed during a war. For example, Andrew Jackson, who was once captured, later became the 7th President of the United States. Therefore, the gap between Huaxia and the United States was very big. In China, if something like this happened, it was not an exaggeration to call those people traitors. But in the United States it was just people with different ideas, and no one would even blame them. This was the reality. But in the face of absolute power, what they say is useless. Tomorrow, you spread some news, saying that I will never allow any chemical factory to enter Winthrop's territory. If they enter, I will withdraw all the funds for the construction of Winthrop, close the shooting range, cut off the passage for Huaxia tourists, and close the commercial street and seaside villas. As for who to support, it depends on the people in the town. However, Jiang Hai was not someone who would smooth things over. Although these things were very common in the United States, the better way was to be soft. The Americans had always been very tough to outsiders, but they had always been very soft to their own people. But Jiang Hai was different. He was going to be tough to the end, and he would not agree to it. Let's see who the townspeople will support. If he was pushed too far, he could just move away. Although he had built this place for a year and had a lot of feelings for it, his ability to make a fortune came from the true dragon's essence in his body, not these external things. If he left, it would not take long for him to create a second or third Winthrop. But if he left, Winthrop would only become a dilapidated town, even if it had a chemical factory. You don't have to do this. Although I admit that there will be some pollution with a chemical factory, it shouldn't be to this extent, right? Sometimes young people are too impulsive. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Mayor Wallace was shocked. Although he really did not want this chemical factory to enter Winthrop, he could not do anything. But if the arm can't twist the thigh, then he will turn a blind eye. At most, he will arrange the location of the factory to be further away. But he didn't think that Jiang Hai would directly say such a thing. Then the townspeople will have to make a choice. In the end, they will choose Jiang Hai and live a comfortable life, or they will choose the chemical factory. No, there are some things that I can't explain to you. I can only say that I can only live in a world with almost no pollution. If Winthrop is no longer where I want to rest, then I will sell everything here and find another suitable place for me to live. There are some things that Jiang Hai can't say. Pollution will slow down the growth of his scales. This is the most unacceptable thing for him, especially after he received the benefits of the scales and aura. If this place is not good, then Jiang Hai can only choose to go to other places. There is nothing to discuss. This is an absolute bottom-line problem. Well, okay, I will release the news tomorrow. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Mayor Wallace could not help but be speechless. Originally, he came to discuss with Jiang Hai, but he did not expect that he would unknowingly find out such news. If the town wants to build a chemical factory, then will Jiang Hai leave? Looking at Jiang Hai's appearance, he did not seem to be lying, he was very serious. If he had to choose between the chemical factory and Jiang Hai, Mayor Wallace would definitely choose Jiang Hai. And he also believed that as long as the townspeople were not stupid, they would definitely choose Jiang Hai. After all, everyone knew that Winthrop's current situation was due to Jiang Hai. If Jiang Hai leaves, then what's the use of having a chemical factory? Going to work there would at most let their families earn more money. If they wanted to really make money, the most important thing was to travel. No one would be stupid enough to think that working in a factory would make more money than now. After a few more words with Jiang Hai, Mayor Wallace drove his car again and left Jiang Hai's manor, returning to his home in the town. Jiang Hai continued to look at the stars in the sky, only hoping that things would not go to the worst step. At this time, in the most luxurious villa in the row of seaside villas built by Jiang Hai, Peter, whom Jiang Hai met today, was now discussing the situation here with his team. Among the people in suits, there was also a more casual person. This person was none other than Augustine Wilson, but at this time, he was much more decadent than a year ago. Chapter 606. If that Zhang clearly doesn't support us, then this matter is really a bit troublesome. Sitting on the sofa in the room, a middle-aged man who met Zhang today pulled his tie and said gloomily, "To be honest, the current situation of chemical factories was really quite awkward. Except for some established local industries, most developed countries would absolutely not allow new chemical factories to build in their own territory. This included countries in Europe and some countries in Asia. The only countries that could build factories with confidence were third-world countries, including some countries in Southeast Asia and Africa. But the problem was that building a factory there would not be enough local consumption, so it would need to be shipped out. Just the tariffs on both sides and all kinds of miscellaneous expenses were enough to give Celanese a headache. They were only a small company with an annual income of $5.9 billion. They did not care if they were not a top company like Dow Chemical. Dow Chemical was more powerful than DuPont Group, but they could not, so it was best for them to choose a place in the United States to build a factory. The United States was definitely a developed country, but its uniqueness was that it was not a complete collection of countries. Instead, each state had its own independent government. It was precisely because of this that they could take advantage of a loophole. If one state did not allow it, another state might allow it. Now they had a good coverage in the central region. They were just waiting to open up the eastern market. They were still very interested in the eastern market. And they absolutely did not want to think about New York. They could not afford to build a factory. New Jersey directly told them that it was impossible. The only possible place was Massachusetts, which was their final target. So no matter what, they would not easily let go of this place. Even if the richest man and the mayor here had already told them that they did not support them, they were still prepared to try. They would not let go of even the slightest chance. Since they wanted to build a factory here, they must have already known the situation here. They naturally knew how important Zhang was in the hearts of the residents here. If Mayor Wallace objected, they were 70% sure that they could build the factory. But if Zhang objected, they might only have about 20%. It was undeniable that now in this town, Zhang status had already surpassed Mayor Wallace, because the lives of Zhang and these townspeople were closely related. The townspeople counted on Zhang to make money. If they fought with Zhang head-on, the result might not be good. What do you think about this Zhang? Looking at the people in front of him, Peter, who was now the nominal supreme commander of this team, gently knocked on his chair and asked them. Hearing the leader's words, a young man here thought for a moment and said, "If we want to conquer this place, this Zhang is a big problem. I suggest we try to bribe him with money." In fact, not only in China but also abroad, there were naturally some shady money. But because the punishment for accepting bribes was very strict here, for example, if someone bribed someone, this person could accept the money first and then report him. In this way, not only could he get the money, but he would also get the money that this person gave him. This person would also have to go to prison and not have to do anything for him. For example, if someone bribed Zhang with $10,000, Zhang could accept the money and then report this person for bribing him. He could keep the $10,000, and this person would have to pay him another $10,000. Then this person would have to go to prison, and Zhang would not have to do anything for him. This was the bribery punishment mechanism in the United States. It maximized the distrust between the two parties who accepted bribes, so this kind of thing would naturally be reduced a lot. "You're from here. Does this Zhang care about money?" Hearing this young man's proposal, Peter did not speak directly. Instead, he looked at Augustine Wilson. This guy was a spy among the townspeople. In my opinion, it's not very possible, because this Zhang is much richer than you think. On the surface, his manor is worth $280 million. Last year, he sold 10,000 cows. I heard that he sold them for more than $1 billion. I'm not very clear about the specific amount of money, but next year, he will pay taxes. It's almost a few $100 million, so even if he can be bribed, it's not the result we want. Looking at Peter, Augustine Wilson hesitated and said. What he said was the truth. Although he also hated Zhang he could not ignore Zhang achievements. Hearing Augustine Wilson's words, the people here could not help but gasp. Originally, they thought that Zhang was just an ordinary rich man, but they did not expect that he was a billionaire. Perhaps in terms of total assets, he was not as good as Celanese Company. But don't forget that Zhang owned it alone. He earned more than $1 billion a year, But Seleni's company was not theirs. They could not get so much money. For them, spending money was about a few $100,000, but now hundreds of thousands, or even millions, were nothing more than pocket money in Zhang Hai's eyes. This was troublesome. If spending money doesn't work, then what's the other way? Looking at the crowd, Peter directly rejected the idea of spending money and said to the crowd. Hearing his words, the people here looked at each other and hesitated. After a while, a middle-aged white man stood up and said to the crowd, "I have an idea. We may be able to drive a wedge between Zhang Hai and the townspeople. After all, Zhang Hai is a Huaxia. Go on." Hearing his words, Peter did not say much and just looked at him. Seeing Peter's encouraging eyes, the middle-aged man also said, "We all know that although there is no racial discrimination in the United States now, racial discrimination has always been there. After all, Zhang Hai is an Asian, and he has not become a naturalized citizen of the United States. So we may be able to start from this aspect and let the townspeople discriminate against Zhang Hai. This is not suitable because these people in the town are not fools. They know that their current lives have changed because of Zhang Hai. Zhang Hai invested in building the town and attracted tourists. Without Zhang Hai, there would be no new town and tourists. They probably would not rebel against Zhang Hai." But before this person finished speaking, he was interrupted by another person. Although it seemed that this strategy was vicious, people in the world were not fools, especially when it came to money. We can send people to lobby these townspeople and tell them that without Zhang Hai, they can also get these things. Zhang Hai is just using them to make money. He is a vampire attached to these people. But obviously, this person did not want to give up his strategy easily and said loudly to the crowd, "Well, Maud, your idea is a bit too radical. As Carl said, the people here are not fools. They will believe what you said. Maybe they will in the future, but now they are still very clear-headed. However, the strategy you said is not completely useless." Waving his hand, Peter signaled the somewhat excited middle-aged man to calm down. Then he touched his chin and pondered. It was inevitable that they would not be able to compete with Zhang Hai in terms of money, whether it was Zhang Hai's own money or the people's money. They knew how important the tourism industry was to the development of the town. Even if a chemical plant attracted all the people in the town, how much income could this kind of occupation earn? It was poisonous and had side effects. $5,000 a month was already the limit of their company. That way, they could earn $60,000 a year. But now, they didn't have to work too hard, and they could earn more than $100,000 a year. For them, the chemical plant was a revenue-generating project, not a necessary project like tourism. Unless there was something wrong with their heads, they wouldn't want to compete for it. The United States was different from Huaxia. Finding a job in Huaxia was a serious matter, but the tourism industry was not so serious. But this was the United States, and there was no such thing as a serious job. If you could make money and not break the law, it was the best choice. Looking at the people in front of him, Peter also said, "We can do this." Hearing Peter's words, the people here could not help but light up. This might be a good idea. After deciding on this plan, most of the people in this team went back to rest, preparing for the attack tomorrow. But there was one person who stayed in Peter's room. This person was also a member of the delegation. But usually, he never took the initiative to talk. He always stayed in the corner, and few people noticed him. If Belle, Azalina, and the others were here, they would be very vigilant against this guy. If this plan doesn't work, then we'll have to rely on you. Do you understand? Looking at this person, Peter whispered. Hearing what he said, this person nodded faintly and then left the room. Zhang Hai, let's see if you can stop us. After everyone left, Peter looked at the starry sky outside and then said with a chuckle. For him, this kind of thing was already a piece of cake. When the sun rose the next day, two news slowly spread in the town almost at the same time. The first news was from the town hall. It was said that Mayor Wallace went to Zhang Hai last night. Zhang Hai said very clearly that he absolutely did not support any chemical company to enter the town. If a chemical company entered the town, then he would withdraw from Winthrop and close all the shops related to him. The other news was, you're tuning in to the Xueqi's Martial Arts Saga YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.